Hey everyone, welcome back to H. Potter. Today we're diving into an amazing story called Betrayed and Hunted. Harry Potter made a deal with the Goblins and collapsed the entire British wizarding economy. If you love these stories, please hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps us bring more content to you. Without further ado, let's begin. Chapter 1, The Betrayal's Edge. Harry's hand tightened around his champagne flute as Minister Thornwood's gaze lingered on him for the third time that evening. Something felt off. The ministry atrium sparkled with enchanted lights celebrating the 5-year anniversary of Voldemort's defeat, but the air carried an undercurrent of tension that made the hair on Harry's neck stand up. "You're being paranoid," he muttered to himself, adjusting the formal robes he still wasn't comfortable wearing. After everything he'd survived, cocktail parties shouldn't make him this anxious. "Talking to yourself, Potter." Draco Malfoy appeared beside him, sipping his drink with practiced nonchalance. "Bad sign, even for you." Harry snorted. "Still a git after all these years, Malfoy. Consistency is my virtue." Draco's smirk had softened since their school days. "Though I must say, you've managed to clean up adequately for the occasion. High praise coming from you." Harry scanned the room again. "Is it me, or are there more Aurors than usual tonight?" Draco followed his gaze, gray eyes narrowing. "Now that you mention it." Before Draco could finish, Minister Thornwood tapped his wand against his glass. The sharp chime cut through the chatter, drawing all eyes to the podium where the tall, silver-haired wizard stood. At 52, Acrobus Thornwood had swept into office on promises of modernization and unity following Kingsley's retirement. "Friends, colleagues, heroes of the war," Thornwood's voice carried effortlessly. "Tonight we celebrate not just a victory over darkness, but the birth of a new wizarding Britain." Applause rippled through the crowd. Harry clapped mechanically, watching Thornwood's face. The man's smile never reached his eyes. "We honor those who fought bravely," Thornwood continued, "those who risked everything for our freedom." His gaze locked with Harry's. "And we must remain vigilant against those who might abuse the trust we place in them." A cold feeling spread through Harry's chest. Around the room, several Aurors shifted positions, moving closer to the exits. "Malfoy," Harry whispered, "something's wrong." "Where's Hermione?" Draco nodded toward the far corner where Hermione stood deep in conversation with an elderly wizard from the Department of Mysteries. "Why?" Harry slipped his wand from his sleeve. "I need to leave. Now." "Potter, don't be dramatic," the rest of Draco's sentence was cut off as Thornwood's voice sharpened. "It is therefore with great regret that I must announce a disturbing development. Evidence has come to light of forbidden magic being performed within the ministry itself." The crowd murmured in shock. Harry froze. "Auror Chambers, please step forward." A tall, broad-shouldered Auror Harry barely recognized approached the podium, carrying a sealed evidence box. "Minister, we've confirmed traces of blood magic in the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, specifically in the office of Harry Potter." The crowd gasped. Heads turned. Eyes found Harry. "That's impossible," Harry said loudly. We have witnesses, Mr. Potter," Thornwood cut in, voice heavy with false regret. "And magical signatures don't lie. Aurors, please detain Mr. Potter for questioning." Four red-robed Aurors moved toward him. Harry's mind raced. Blood magic. He hadn't even been in his office for 3 days, tied up with fieldwork in Scotland. "Harry," Hermione pushed through the crowd, face pale. "Don't resist. We'll sort this out legally." "I didn't do anything, Hermione," Harry said, backing away. "Then you have nothing to fear from questioning," Thornwood called out, voice silky. "Unless there are other secrets you're hiding from us, Savior." The way he said "Savior" made Harry's decision for him. This wasn't justice, it was a trap. 5 years of Auror instincts screamed warnings. "Sorry, Minister," Harry said, backing toward the Flo network. "I prefer fair trials, and this feels more like a lynching." "Seize him." Thornwood barked, dropping all pretense. Harry spun, casting a nonverbal fumose that filled the area with thick smoke. Guests screamed and scattered as visibility dropped to 0. Harry ducked low, moving by memory toward the nearest fireplace. Incarcerus. A rope spell whizzed past his ear. Harry rolled, casting a wide area finite that disrupted the Ministry's anti-apparition wards for just seconds, a trick he'd learned during a security review last year. The irony wasn't lost on him as he prepared to disapparate. A hand grabbed his arm. Harry spun, wand ready, to find Draco Malfoy's face inches from his. "Potter, wait. You run, you look guilty." "I'm already guilty in their eyes," Harry hissed. "Why this sudden concern?" Malfoy's face hardened. "Because Thornwood came after my family's assets last month. Called it reparations revaluation. This isn't about you, it's about control." A stunning spell blasted between them. Harry made his choice. "Tell Hermione to check my office. And tell her I'm sorry." He twisted away from Malfoy and disapparated with a crack, just as the smoke began to clear. Harry reappeared in a narrow alley in Muggle London, heart pounding. He'd only bought himself minutes. The Ministry could track apparition signatures, and his was well documented. He transfigured his formal robes into a nondescript jacket and jeans, then slipped into the evening crowd on Charing Cross Road. His mind worked furiously. Blood magic? The accusation was absurd, but perfectly chosen, serious enough to justify immediate arrest, vague enough to be difficult to disprove. Harry ducked into a coffee shop, ordered quickly, and sat with his back to the wall. He needed a plan. The Ministry controlled everything: transportation, communication, his home, his vault. Within hours, they'd freeze his assets at Gringotts. Gringotts. Harry sat up straighter. The Goblins operated under different laws. They'd never fully trusted the Ministry, maintaining their independence through centuries of wizard rule. He checked his watch. Nearly 9. The bank would be closed, but Goblins worked around the clock. He needed to reach them before the Ministry issued a freeze order. Harry left some Muggle money on the table and slipped back onto the street. He couldn't risk the Leaky Cauldron's entrance to Diagon Alley. Too obvious. But there was another way, an old service entrance the Aurors had discovered during a smuggling investigation. 20 minutes of cautious movement through London brought Harry to an unremarkable office building 3 blocks from the Leaky Cauldron. He tapped a specific brick pattern in the alley beside it and whispered an access code. The wall shimmered, revealing a narrow passage. Harry stepped through, immediately feeling the tingle of crossing magical barriers. The passage opened onto a quiet side street of Diagon Alley. Shops were closed, windows dark. In the distance, Gringotts' white marble facade gleamed under the moonlight. Harry kept to the shadows, moving quickly. Twice he froze as patrol wizards passed. Thornwood had already mobilized searches. At the bank side entrance, Harry pressed his palm against the door and spoke in halting gobbledygook, one of the few phrases he'd learned during his years working with them: "I seek sanctuary under the Accords of 1734. For several heartbeats, nothing happened. Then the door creaked open, revealing a goblin guard with a spiked halberd. "Potter," the goblin growled, yellow eyes narrowing. "We wondered when you'd appear. You know about the accusations? News travels fast when wizards panic." The goblin stepped aside. "Follow me." Harry entered, immediately feeling safer within the ancient stone walls. The goblin led him through narrow corridors rather than the main hall, descending several flights of stairs. They passed vault mechanisms and counting rooms where goblins tracked ledgers despite the late hour. They stopped before an ornate door engraved with the Gringotts crest. The goblin knocked 3 times. "Enter," came a gravelly voice. The office inside was surprisingly sparse, no gold or jewels on display, just walls of books, strange instruments, and a massive desk behind which sat the oldest goblin Harry had ever seen. His skin was leather-like, eyes milky with age yet sharp with intelligence. "Harry Potter," the ancient goblin said, closing the ledger before him. "I am Nagnok, Director of Special Accounts. Your timing is fortuitous. We received ministry orders to freeze your vaults 10 minutes ago." Harry's stomach dropped. "And did you?" Nagnok's wrinkled face split into a toothy smile. "Gringotts processes such requests during regular business hours. Most unfortunate that they arrived after closing." Harry released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet, wizard. By morning, we'll have no choice but to comply." Nagnok gestured to a chair. "You invoked ancient sanctuary. Why should Gringotts risk ministry wrath for you?" Harry sat, gathering his thoughts. "Because something bigger than me is happening. Minister Thornwood is consolidating power, framing me to eliminate opposition." "Politicians always grasp for power," Nagnok dismissed with a wave. "Why should goblins care about wizard squabbles?" "Because he came after the Malfoy vaults last month," Harry said, remembering Draco's words. "He called it, reparations revaluation. I think he's targeting old wealth, any power base that might challenge him." Nagnok went very still. "You have evidence of this?" "Not yet. But if he's targeting me and old wizard families, how long before he turns to Gringotts?" Harry leaned forward. "Thornwood campaigned on modernization. What's more modern than bringing the goblin banking system under ministry control?" The old goblin's fingers tapped the desk, a rhythmic click of claw against wood. "Interesting theory. But the treaties of 1612 protect our independence." "Treaties can be reinterpreted by those with enough power," Harry countered. "Look how easily he turned public opinion against me tonight." A younger goblin entered without knocking, whispering urgently in Nagnok's ear. The director's expression darkened. "It seems, Mr. Potter, that the ministry isn't waiting until morning." Nagnok stood. "Aurors have surrounded the bank, demanding we surrender you and provide access to your vaults immediately." Harry's hand moved to his wand. "I can leave. I don't want to bring trouble to Gringotts." "And go where?" Nagnok asked sharply. "Every wizard dwelling will be watched. Every international port key monitored." "Then what do you suggest?" Nagnok studied him for a long moment. "A proposal. The ministry fears you because of your influence, your hero status. But what they truly fear is losing control of gold and what it buys them." The old goblin pressed a hidden switch, revealing a concealed door. "Come. There's something you should see before you decide." Harry followed Nagnok through the door and down a spiraling staircase that seemed to descend forever. The air grew colder, heavier with ancient magic. They emerged into a vast chamber unlike anything Harry had seen in the bank before. The circular room had a domed ceiling etched with constellations that moved in real time. The floor featured a massive inlaid map of Britain, glowing with thousands of tiny golden lights connected by shimmering threads. "What is this place?" "The heart of accounts," Nagnok said reverently. "From here, we monitor every financial transaction in Wizarding Britain." Harry stared at the map in awe. "Each light is a vault." "Each light is a nexus of economic power," Nagnok corrected. "Businesses, family vaults, ministry accounts. The threads show the flow of gold." He gestured to a particularly bright concentration. "The ministry's economic influence has grown exponentially under Thornwood." Harry noticed something strange. Those dark spots, areas with no lights. Magical communities the ministry has deemed unworthy of economic participation. Werewolf settlements. Centaur territories. Certain Muggle-born enclaves. Nagnok's voice hardened. The ministry controls who prospers through selective enforcement of regulations. Understanding dawned on Harry. "You're saying this isn't just about me. Or even about Gringotts. It's about power, Mr. Potter. For centuries, goblins have maintained a balance, ensuring no single entity controlled wizard wealth. Thornwood seeks to change that. Nagnok pointed to a pattern of dimming lights. Small businesses closing. Independent media outlets losing funding. Old families finding their assets mysteriously devalued. Like the Malfoys, Harry murmured. Precisely. And now you, a wizard with both substantial wealth and public influence. Above them, alarm bells began to ring. Nagnok seemed unconcerned. The Aurors are attempting to breach our outer defenses. They will fail, but their effort signals Thornwood's desperation. The old goblin turned to Harry. So, Mr. Potter, I ask again, why should Gringotts protect you? Harry looked at the map, at the patterns of light and dark representing prosperity and poverty, power and exclusion. Then he met Nagnok's gaze. Because I can help you protect everyone else. If Thornwood's using economic control to gain power, then we fight back the same way. And how would you propose to do that? Nagnok asked, though his eyes gleamed with interest. I don't know yet, Harry admitted. But between your financial knowledge and my, well, tendency to cause trouble for corrupt officials, I bet we could figure something out. A goblin messenger burst into the chamber. Director. Ministry officials invoke Treaty Section 5 demanding entry to retrieve a suspected dark wizard. Nagnok nodded calmly. Tell them Gringotts acknowledges their request and will respond according to treaty provisions. The messenger hesitated. The response time allowed is 3 days, Nagnok finished. I'm aware. Go. After the messenger left, Harry raised an eyebrow. 3 days. The treaty is quite specific about requests involving sanctuary claims. Even the ministry cannot circumvent it without risking international repercussions. Nagnok's smile showed too many pointed teeth. It buys us time. Harry ran a hand through his hair. Time for what exactly? I still don't see how we can fight the entire ministry. Not the entire ministry, Nagnok corrected. Just its financial control. He gestured to the map. For centuries, wizards have dismissed goblin magic as mere metallurgy and accounting. They forget that for us, gold is magic. The old goblin touched a section of the map, and the image shifted, revealing layers of spellwork embedded in the financial flows. Wizard currency isn't merely metal stamped with symbols, Nagnok explained. Each galleon carries enchantments, anti-forgery spells, tracking charms, ministry regulatory magic. Harry's eyes widened. You're saying the ministry can track every coin? Not precisely. But they monitor patterns, large transfers, anything that might challenge their control. Nagnok's expression grew cunning. However, there are older forms of exchange. Methods forgotten by most wizards but preserved in goblin memory. You're suggesting we create an alternative economy, Harry said slowly, the implications dawning on him. I'm suggesting we remind Wizarding Britain that true wealth isn't controlled by ministry decree. Nagnok extended his hand. An alliance, Mr. Potter. Your knowledge of wizard society and magic, combined with goblin financial expertise. Together, we could rebalance the scales. Harry stared at the offered hand. This wasn't just about clearing his name anymore. This was revolution, bloodless perhaps, but no less radical. If I agree, what happens next? First, we secure your assets before morning, transferring them beyond ministry reach. Then, your education begins. Nagnok's eyes gleamed. How much do you know about goblin magic, Mr. Potter? Practically nothing, Harry admitted. Good. That means you have no wizard prejudices to unlearn. The old goblin gestured to the map. By the time we're finished, Thornwood will regret ever touching your vault. The chamber shuddered slightly. Far above, Harry could hear muffled shouting. They're getting impatient, he observed. Let them. Nagnok seemed unconcerned. The question remains, are you with us, Harry Potter? Harry thought of the ministry celebration turned ambush, of Thornwood's self-satisfied smile, of years spent fighting dark wizards only to be branded one himself. He thought of Hermione's shocked face and wondered how many others would believe the lies. Then he looked at the map showing the systematic economic oppression of those the ministry deemed unworthy, patterns he'd never noticed before. He'd defeated Voldemort only for a different kind of control to take hold. Harry grasped Nagnak's hand. "I'm in." The goblin's grip was surprisingly strong. "Then let us begin." The next 12 hours passed in a blur of activity. Deep beneath Gringotts, Harry was led through a labyrinth of passages to a secure section where, Nagnak explained, not even the highest-ranking ministry officials had ever set foot. "Your vault contents are being transferred to our Singapore branch," a goblin accountant named Griphook informed him. "Converted to raw materials rather than galleons to avoid tracing." "Wait, Singapore?" Harry asked. "How can you transfer physical gold that quickly?" Griphook exchanged an amused look with Nagnak. "Wizards always think so literally. Gold is energy, Mr. Potter. Energy can be transformed." Before Harry could question this further, they reached a circular room with a central pedestal. Nagnak pressed his palm against it, causing the floor to glow with runic patterns. "Your wand, Mr. Potter." Harry hesitated only briefly before handing it over. Nagnak placed it on the pedestal. "Ministry tracking charms." Harry guessed. "Standard procedure for all Auror wands," Nagnak confirmed. "But easily cleansed if you know how." The goblin produced a small golden hammer and tapped the wand 3 times while speaking in gobbledygook. The wand emitted a shower of sparks, and Harry felt a strange sensation, like something snapping far away. "There. You're now untraceable by conventional means." Nagnak returned the wand. "Though I'd advise minimal magic for now. Thornwood will have deployed more exotic tracking methods." Harry nodded, pocketing his wand. "What about communications? I need to reach Hermione, make her understand I didn't do this." "All Owlpost is being intercepted," said a new voice. Harry turned to see a young female goblin entering with several scrolls. Unlike most goblins he'd met, she wore modern clothing, something like a business suit adapted for goblin proportions. "Mr. Potter, this is Silvermark, our ministry liaison and intelligence specialist," Nagnak introduced. Silvermark nodded curtly. "They're spinning quite the story above ground. The Prophet's Morning Edition calls you the boy who turned dark and offers 1,000 galleon reward for information." Harry winced. That was fast. "Thornwood controls the media channels now," she continued, unrolling a scroll. "But more concerning is this, emergency legislation being pushed through the Wisengamot granting Auror's expanded search powers, including access to Gringotts vaults connected to suspected dark wizards." Nagnak's face darkened. "They move faster than anticipated." "It's not just about me, is it?" Harry asked. "He's using me as an excuse for what he already planned to do." "Precisely," Silvermark confirmed. "Your case is the perfect pretense for weakening goblin banking independence." Harry paced the room, mind racing. "We need to get ahead of this. Counter the narrative somehow. The Quibbler might help," he continued, thinking aloud. "Luna would never buy this frame job. And we need eyes inside the ministry, people we can trust." "You're Miss Granger, perhaps?" Nagnak suggested. Harry shook his head. "Hermione believes in systems and procedures. She'll want to investigate properly before doing anything. We can't reach her yet." He paused. "But there might be someone else who could help. Someone who understands how the game is played." "Malfoy," he decided. "Draco tried to warn me tonight. If Thornwood's already moved against his family's assets, he might be willing to help." Silvermark looked skeptical. "The Malfoys aren't known for their loyalty to anyone but themselves." "True, but they're excellent at self-preservation," Harry countered. "And right now, their interests align with ours. Nagnok nodded approvingly. Self-interest is a more reliable motivation than friendship. How do you propose to contact him? Harry grinned. There's one communication method the Ministry can't trace because they don't know it exists. He concentrated, thinking of Draco Malfoy and the warning he'd given. Then Harry cast his Patronus, the silvery stag erupting from his wand. Find Draco Malfoy, Harry instructed it. Tell him, I'm safe. The Singapore solution might work for your family too. Midnight tomorrow, the place where ferrets bounce. The stag nodded once before disappearing through the wall. Clever, Nagnok admitted. Though using magic risks detection. Worth it, Harry said. Besides, Patronus magic is too positive for dark wizard trackers to pick up easily. Griphook cleared his throat. Director, the emergency council is assembled. They await your report on the situation. Nagnok nodded. Mr. Potter, I must confer with our leadership. Silvermark will continue your orientation. He fixed Harry with a penetrating stare. By morning, we must have our first countermeasure ready. The wizarding economy expects Gringotts to open as usual. What happens if you don't open? Harry asked. Nagnok's smile was all teeth. Then the first tremors of financial panic begin. After Nagnok departed, Silvermark led Harry deeper into the complex, eventually reaching what appeared to be living quarters. You'll stay here, she explained. These rooms are shielded from magical detection and contain basic amenities. The space was surprisingly comfortable: bedroom, sitting area, and a small kitchen, all furnished in Goblin style with low furniture and practical designs. I've brought these for your review, Silvermark added, placing several books and scrolls on a table. Basic primers on Goblin financial magic. Director Nagnok expects you to familiarize yourself with the concepts before morning. Harry picked up the topmost book, titled Conductive Properties of Precious Metals in Spell Anchoring. Light reading, huh, he joked. Silvermark didn't smile. The faster you understand our systems, the sooner we can implement countermeasures. She moved to leave, then hesitated. Many goblins question Nagnok's decision to grant you sanctuary. They remember your break-in during the war. Harry winced at the memory. That was necessary, perhaps, she interrupted. But it demonstrated how quickly wizards disregard our sovereignty when convenient. Don't make Nagnok regret his trust. After she left, Harry sank into a chair, suddenly aware of how exhausted he was. The events of the evening felt surreal. Yesterday, he'd been a respected Auror. Now he was a fugitive plotting economic warfare from beneath Gringotts. Despite his fatigue, Harry opened the book and began reading. The text was dense, filled with unfamiliar terminology, but fascinating. Goblin magic approached spellwork entirely differently than wizard education had taught him, treating gold and silver not just as valuable materials but as magical conductors that could store, amplify, and redirect magical energy. Hours passed as Harry absorbed the basics. Occasionally, he jotted notes or attempted small exercises described in the text, creating simple enchantments on coins Silvermark had left. By dawn, his eyes burned with tiredness, but he'd grasped the fundamental principles. A knock at the door roused him from his studies. Nagnok entered, looking as though he hadn't slept either. It's time, Mr. Potter. The bank should have opened 10 minutes ago. Harry stood, stretching stiff muscles. What's happening above? Ministry officials wait at our doors with seizure warrants. The Wisengamot passed Thornwood's emergency measures at an overnight session. Nagnok handed Harry a small golden token. This will allow you to observe without being present. Harry examined the token, a flat disc engraved with a single rune. What does it do? Place it against your forehead. Harry complied. Instantly, his vision shifted. He was now seeing through someone else's eyes, a goblin standing in the grand entrance hall of Gringotts. Before him stretched a line of wizards, many looking anxious. At the doors, Aurors in official robes stood with a ministry delegation. Clever, Harry murmured. Whose eyes am I borrowing? Ragnarok, our head teller. Listen carefully. Through the connection, Harry heard a pompous wizard in ministry robes addressing the goblin. Completely unacceptable. Gringotts has never delayed opening without notice. There are people with legitimate business waiting. Ragnarok's voice replied coolly, Gringotts must occasionally perform security maintenance. The treaties of 1612 grant us full discretion in such matters. This maintenance coincidentally occurs the same night Harry Potter seeks refuge here. The ministry official's voice dripped with skepticism. We have warrants for his arrest and the inspection of his vaults. Gringotts acknowledges receipt of your warrants, Ragnarok responded, using the exact phrasing Harry had heard the previous night. We will respond within the 3 days permitted by treaty. A red-faced Auror pushed forward. You can't harbor a suspected dark wizard. Gringotts harbors no one, Ragnarok stated. We merely operate according to established procedures. Now, I regret to inform all customers that Gringotts will remain closed today for continued security maintenance. The announcement caused an immediate uproar. Wizards shouted questions and protests. Harry could see several reporters from the Daily Prophet scribbling furiously. If you prevent legitimate commerce, the ministry official threatened, the minister has authority to invoke emergency financial measures. Ragnarok remained impassive. The Goblin Nation acknowledges your statement. Gringotts will reopen when our security protocols are satisfied. The Goblin turned away, ignoring further protests. Harry removed the token, his vision returning to normal. They're panicking already, he observed. As expected. Ragnarok looked pleased. By midday, rumors will spread. By evening, wizards will wonder if their gold is safe. Won't this hurt innocent people? Harry worried. Temporarily, yes. But sometimes systems must be stressed before they can be reformed. Ragnarok spread a map of Diagon Alley across the table. Now, based on your reading, tell me how we might establish alternative exchange points that circumvent ministry currency controls. Harry hesitated only briefly before pointing to several locations. Here, and here. Small businesses with high traffic but low ministry oversight. We'd need willing participants who understand the risks. Very good, Ragnarok approved. And how would you secure these transactions against tracking? Harry recalled a chapter from his night's reading. Metal transmutation linked to intent-based recognition. The galleons would appear normal to ministry detection but transform for authenticated users. Ragnarok's yellow eyes gleamed. You learn quickly for a wizard. Perhaps there's hope for this alliance yet. Their planning session was interrupted by Silvermark's arrival. Her expression was grim. Director, Thornwood has made his next move. He's frozen all personal accounts of any wizard associated with Harry Potter, citing potential conspiracy. Who's affected? Harry asked, suddenly anxious. The entire Weasley family. Longbottom. Thomas. Lovegood. Several dozen others. She handed Ragnarok a list. They're being called in for questioning about your whereabouts. Harry's fists clenched. He's going after my friends to get to me. No, Ragnarok corrected, studying the list. He's eliminating anyone who might publicly support you. Notice the pattern: journalists, business owners, those with public platforms or financial independence. The realization hit Harry like a bludgeon. This was never just about me. I'm the excuse, not the target. Precisely. Ragnarok rolled up the list. Thornwood wants control. You're merely the justification for seizing it. Harry stood abruptly. We need to move faster. My friends are suffering while we plan. Rashness will only aid Thornwood, Ragnarok cautioned. But I agree, the time for action approaches. He turned to Silvermark. Activate the copper network. It's time our friends in the non-wizard financial community were informed. Silvermark nodded and hurried out. Nagnok turned back to Harry. Now, Mr. Potter, your goblin financial education must accelerate. How much do you know about bloodbound contracts? Harry raised an eyebrow. Isn't that exactly what I'm accused of using? Ironic, isn't it? Nagnok's smile was sharp. But there's a vast difference between dark blood magic and goblin contract bindings. One corrupts, the other ensures absolute trust. And which will we be using? Harry asked warily. Both, after a fashion. Nagnok rolled up his sleeve, revealing an intricate pattern of scars like circuit diagrams across his skin. True power lies in understanding the boundaries between magics others fear to approach. Harry studied the markings, recognition dawning. Those patterns, they matched the floor in the heart of accounts. Observant. Yes, I am bound to Gringotts' financial network. It allows me to sense every significant transaction in Britain. Nagnok traced one of the scars. What wizards call dark magic is often merely magic they cannot control. You're suggesting I undergo something similar? Harry asked, both fascinated and apprehensive. A temporary binding only, keyed to specific accounts we'll use to bypass ministry controls. Nagnok produced a small silver knife. A drop of blood freely given holds power no coercion can match. Harry thought of his friends being harassed by the ministry, of accounts frozen and lives disrupted because of his supposed crimes. Of Thornwood's smug certainty that he could rewrite the rules to serve himself. Let's do it. Nagnok nodded approvingly. Then we begin your real education, Mr. Potter. By nightfall, you'll understand why goblins have survived centuries of wizard supremacy. The binding ritual took place in a small chamber deep beneath the bank. Harry stood in a circle of goblin gold as Nagnok chanted in gobbledygook. The single drop of blood Harry had contributed hung suspended in a glass vial, gradually turning from red to a metallic silver. Blood becomes currency, Nagnok explained between incantations. Currency becomes influence. Influence becomes power. The silver liquid suddenly flashed, then shot toward Harry in a metallic stream. Instead of striking him, it divided into thousands of tiny droplets that orbited him like a constellation. Now comes the knowledge transfer, Nagnok warned. It may be uncomfortable. That proved to be an understatement. As the silver droplets began to sink into Harry's skin, information flooded his mind, account numbers, transaction histories, financial formulas, currency conversion rates. His knees buckled as decades of goblin financial knowledge compressed into moments. Breathe through it, Nagnok instructed calmly. Let the patterns form naturally. Harry gritted his teeth, forcing himself to accept rather than resist the influx. Gradually, the chaotic stream of information organized itself in his mind like a complex filing system he could access at will. When the ritual ended, Harry remained on his knees, gasping. His forearms now bore faint silver tracings, not scars like Nagnok's, but shimmering lines just below the skin that faded from view when he wasn't focusing on them. Remarkable, Nagnok observed. Most wizards require days to integrate even a fraction of what you've absorbed. Harry stood shakily. Must be all that experience having foreign consciousnesses in my head. The joke fell flat even to his own ears. How do you feel? Nagnok asked, studying him carefully. Like I suddenly understand economics better than Hermione, Harry answered honestly. And I can feel pulses. Transactions happening all over Britain. The larger ones only, for now. Your sensitivity will increase with practice. Nagnok handed him a robe embroidered with goblin symbols. Put this on. We have a meeting with the Goblin High Council in 10 minutes. Harry donned the robe, surprised by its perfect fit. Why am I attending a Goblin Council meeting? Because what we're about to propose has not been done since the Goblin Rebellion of 1752. Nagnok's expression was grave. We're going to create a parallel economy, one beyond ministry control. The Goblin High Council chamber made Harry realize how little he'd known about Goblin culture despite years of interactions. 7 ancient goblins sat on raised stone seats around a circular table embedded with precious gems and metals. The air thrummed with old magic, making Harry's new sensitivity to financial energies prickle uncomfortably. Nagnok addressed the council in gobbledygook, occasionally gesturing to Harry. Though he couldn't understand the language, Harry now grasped the financial concepts being discussed: currency decoupling, asset redistribution, alternative value systems. Finally, the eldest counselor addressed Harry directly in English. Harry Potter. You stand before us as both fugitive and potential ally. Director Nagnok proposes measures not taken in centuries. The ancient goblin's voice rasped like metal on stone. Why should we risk goblin lives and treasure in wizard conflicts? Harry stepped forward, feeling the weight of their scrutiny. Because this isn't a wizard conflict, it's an attempt to seize control of all magical beings through economic means. Today it's my accounts being frozen. Tomorrow it might be additional, regulatory oversight of Gringotts. Next month, new restrictions on goblin-made artifacts. He pointed to the financial sensory lines on his arms, now glowing visibly in the chamber's magical atmosphere. Through this binding, I can feel what you've always known: the ministry's financial control extending like a web. Thornwood is just pulling the strands tighter. Pretty words, a female counselor commented. But wizards have never treated other magical beings as equals. Some have tried, Harry countered. And failed because the systems were already corrupted. I'm not asking for goblin lives, I'm offering partnership to change those systems. The council deliberated in gobbledygook, occasionally pointing to Harry or the financial charts hovering above the table. Finally, the head counselor spoke. We will permit the implementation of Nagnok's plan, with conditions. First, goblin interests must be prioritized equally with wizard concerns. Second, all artifacts stolen from goblin crafters must be returned as part of any settlement. Third, you will be bound by oath not to reveal goblin financial magic to other wizards without council approval. Harry nodded. I accept these terms. Then let us begin. The counselor struck a small gong. As of this moment, Gringotts officially invokes Article 7 of the Treaty of 1612, financial independence during periods of wizard instability. Nagnok looked surprised. The full Article 7? Are you certain, Council Elder? The signs are clear, the Elder responded. Thornwood's actions mirror the 1622 attempt to seize goblin assets. We will not wait for history to repeat itself completely. Harry glanced between them. What does Article 7 mean exactly? Nagnok's expression was grim but satisfied. It means, Mr. Potter, that as of this moment, Gringotts has formally suspended recognition of ministry currency control. We are now operating under independent wartime protocols. Wartime? Harry echoed, alarmed. I didn't agree to start a war. Not with weapons, the council elder clarified. But make no mistake, economic warfare can be just as devastating. The ministry declared the first hostilities by attempting to seize goblin-protected assets. As if on cue, a young goblin messenger burst into the chamber. Director. Minister Thornwood has just announced an emergency decree. All goblin movement outside Gringotts is restricted, pending security reviews. Aurors are setting up checkpoints in Diagon Alley. The council erupted in angry gobbledygook. Nagnok turned to Harry, eyes glittering. It seems Thornwood saves us the trouble of explaining our position. He has just declared economic war on the goblin nation. Harry felt a chill. Events were moving faster than he'd anticipated. What's our first move? We've already made it, Nagnok replied. Gringotts remains closed. By now, word has spread. The first signs of financial panic will appear by afternoon. That still hurts ordinary people, Harry protested. Temporarily, Nagnok agreed. But sometimes the patient must feel pain before healing can begin. The head counselor struck the gong again. Implement the copper protocol. Activate all auxiliary exchange nodes. Nagnok bowed. At once, Elder. As they left the council chamber, Harry whispered, "What's the copper protocol?" "Our emergency system," Nagnok explained, walking briskly. For centuries, goblins have maintained alternative exchange locations throughout Britain, small, unassuming businesses run by trusted non-wizards or wizard allies. Like a secret banking network. Precisely. Normally used for goblin transactions outside wizard oversight, but in emergencies, they become a parallel financial system. Nagnok led Harry to a map room where goblins were already activating glowing points across a three-dimensional model of Britain. Each light represents an exchange node, Silvermark explained, joining them. Ordinary businesses, pubs, bookshops, even street vendors, with hidden capabilities. Harry watched the network illuminate. And they all agree to this? They're well compensated for the risk, Nagnok said. Many are beings who've suffered under ministry regulations, werewolves, part Vila, those married to muggleborns who face discrimination. A pattern emerged as more nodes activated, concentrations in areas the ministry map had shown as economically disadvantaged. Now for your role, Nagnok continued. We need to distribute new currency units that function outside ministry tracking. But you can't create galleons without ministry approval, Harry noted, recalling wizarding law. We won't create galleons, Nagnok corrected with a sly smile. We'll create something better. From his robes, he produced a simple copper disc. No larger than a galleon, it bore a lightning bolt on one side and a simplified Gringotts crest on the other. Copper conducts magic more efficiently than gold, Nagnok explained. Less valuable in wizard terms, but actually superior for certain enchantments. Harry took the coin, immediately feeling the complex magic woven through it. His newly enhanced senses detected layered spells, authentication charms, anti-tracking measures, and something deeper he couldn't quite identify. These will be recognized at all copper network locations, Silvermark added. Value stable and impossible for the ministry to freeze or track. You've been planning this for a long time, Harry realized. Nagnok nodded. Goblins always prepare for wizard betrayal. It's how we've survived. How many can we distribute? Harry asked, examining the coin. 10,000 initially, Silvermark replied. Prioritizing those whose accounts Thornwood has frozen. Harry thought of the Weasleys, of Luna, of all his friends being punished for their association with him. Let's start there. And I need to make that meeting with Malfoy tonight. Nagnok consulted a timepiece. You have 9 hours. First, we must complete your training on the distribution protocol. The next several hours passed in intensive instruction. Harry learned to activate the copper coins, linking them to specific users through a simplified version of the blood binding he'd undergone. Each coin would recognize its owner, transforming from ordinary copper to the enchanted currency only for authorized users. By late afternoon, the first reports of wider effects reached them. Silvermark brought news from their surface contacts. Diagon Alley is in chaos, she reported. Shops can't complete transactions without Gringotts access. The ministry has begun issuing emergency scrip, but merchants are reluctant to accept it. Scrip? Harry asked. Paper promises, Nagnok explained dismissively. Worthless without gold backing. That was faster than expected, Silvermark added. Thornwood must have prepared this response in advance. Further confirming our suspicions, Nagnok noted. He planned to challenge Gringotts' authority all along. A messenger arrived with a sealed note. Nagnok read it quickly, then passed it to Harry. From your contact, he explained. Harry recognized Luna's handwriting immediately. Harry, I know you're innocent. Daddy and I are publishing the truth in tomorrow's Quibbler, despite ministry threats. They've frozen our accounts, but we have savings hidden in the dirigible plum garden. Be careful, they're monitoring all known associates. Raxperts are especially thick around the ministry these days. Luna. Harry smiled despite the circumstances. Luna's steadfast support warmed him, though he worried about the risks she was taking. We should get copper coins to the Lovegoods immediately, he told Nagnok. The Quibbler might be our best way to spread information about the alternative currency. Already arranged, Nagnok confirmed. A contact will deliver their allocation disguised as printing supplies. As evening approached, preparations for Harry's covert meeting with Draco intensified. The place where ferrets bounce referred to an incident in their 4th year, a location in Hogsmeade where Mad-Eye Moody had transfigured Draco into a ferret. Too risky, Silvermark argued when Harry explained his plan to leave Gringotts. The entire Aura department is hunting you. Which is why they'll be watching obvious locations, Harry countered. Not a random street corner in Hogsmeade with significance only Draco and I would understand. Nagnok studied the bank's security monitors showing Diagon Alley outside. Aura patrols have increased, but our intelligence suggests they're focusing on London transportation hubs and known Potter properties. I still need a way out undetected, Harry said. The director smiled thinly. Gringotts has many exits unknown to wizards. Some quite far from here. This proved to be an understatement. Harry followed Nagnok and 2 security goblins through increasingly ancient tunnels until they reached what appeared to be a dead end. One of the guards pressed a specific pattern of stones, revealing a narrow passage. This connects to old smuggling tunnels from the Goblin Wars, Nagnok explained. Follow it for approximately 1 mile. It will lead you to a cellar in Nocturne Alley. Harry nodded, accepting a small bag containing 50 copper coins. For Malfoy. A starting allocation. Convince him, if you can. The old families could be powerful allies in this conflict. And if I'm caught? Harry asked practically. Nagnok handed him a small copper token similar to the viewing disc from earlier. Destroy this if you're in danger. We'll know. The tunnel was cramped and damp, forcing Harry to hunch as he made his way by wandlight. Ancient goblin runes marked the walls at intervals, occasionally pulsing with faint magic as he passed. After what felt like hours but was likely only 30 minutes, he reached a crude ladder leading up to a trapdoor. Harry emerged into a dusty wine cellar that smelled of age and neglect. He extinguished his wand and listened carefully before making his way upstairs into what appeared to be an abandoned shop. Peering through grimy windows, he confirmed his location, a disused apothecary on the quieter end of Nocturne Alley. From there, Harry moved cautiously, using back alleys and detection diversion charms he'd learned as an Auror. Twice he froze as patrol wizards passed nearby, their conversations revealing the scope of the search, checking every fireplace in the network. 50 Aurors just for Hogsmeade, can you believe it? Robards is furious, says Potter made fools of the entire department. It took over an hour to reach the designated apparition point, a service alley behind a seldom-used warehouse. Harry disillusioned himself before operating to Hogsmeade, choosing a landing spot in the woods outside the village rather than risking the main apparition points. The place where ferrets bounce wasn't hard to find, the spot outside the 3 broomsticks where Moody had performed his infamous transfiguration. At nearly midnight, the street was mostly deserted, though light and noise spilled from the pub's windows. Harry positioned himself in shadows across the street, maintaining his disillusionment charm while watching for signs of Aurors. Minutes passed. Then, just as the village clock began striking 12, a cloaked figure appeared at the far end of the street, walking with the unmistakable aristocratic bearing of a Malfoy. Draco paused near the remembered spot, glancing around casually as though merely taking in the night air. Harry waited until 2 laughing patrons exited the pub and passed Draco before making his move. That shade of ferret was rather fetching on you, Harry murmured as he passed close behind Malfoy. To his credit, Draco didn't startle or look around. At least I made a handsome rodent, Potter. Are you going to stay invisible, or can we speak like civilized wizards? Keep walking toward the shrieking shack, Harry instructed. Less traffic that way. Once they reached the quieter path leading to the infamous haunted house, Harry led Draco off the trail and behind a large oak tree before dropping his disillusionment. "You look terrible," Draco observed coolly. "Being a fugitive doesn't suit you." "Not my first choice of careers," Harry replied dryly. "Thanks for coming." Draco leaned against the tree, affecting nonchalance that didn't quite mask his tension. "Your message was intriguing. Singapore solution. Gringotts has been transferring assets to their international branches, beyond ministry reach." Harry explained quickly. "They can do the same for your family." "Interesting." Draco's expression gave nothing away. "And why would the Goblins help the Malfoys?" "Because you're both targets of the same campaign," Harry said bluntly. "Thornwood's going after old money, independent power bases. Your reparations revaluation was just the beginning." Draco's mask slipped slightly, revealing genuine concern. "Father suspected as much. The new tariffs on imported potions ingredients are targeting our remaining business interests." "It's systematic," Harry confirmed. "But we have a countermeasure." He produced one of the copper coins. Draco took it, examining it skeptically. "A coin? That's your grand solution?" "Not just any coin. It operates outside ministry tracking, part of an alternative economy the Goblins are establishing." Harry explained the copper network quickly. "Your family still has connections with merchants, suppliers, old pureblood networks. We need those connections." "You're asking me to commit economic treason," Draco noted, though he continued studying the coin with interest. "I'm offering you a way to protect your family's wealth from a ministry that's already shown its intentions." Harry countered. Draco was silent for a long moment. "What happened at your office, Potter? The blood magic they found?" "Planted, obviously. I hadn't even been there for days." "I believe you," Draco said, surprising Harry. Thornwood's people were too prepared, too coordinated. The evidence appeared too conveniently. "You've been watching him," Harry realized. Draco nodded. "Since he started making noise about redistributing Malfoy assets. Father may be compromised by his past, but he taught me to recognize power grabs." A twig snapped in the distance. Both men tensed, wands ready, but it was only a rabbit darting through the underbrush. "We shouldn't linger," Draco said. "Hogsmeade is crawling with Aurors. Weasley's leading a search team." "Ron?" Harry asked, heart sinking. "He's actually hunting for me?" Appeared quite determined. Draco's expression held a hint of sympathy. "For what it's worth, Granger doesn't seem convinced. I overheard her arguing with him about circumstantial evidence. That was something, at least." Harry pushed aside his feelings about Ron and focused on the matter at hand. "I have 49 more coins," he said, producing the pouch. "Distribute them to people you trust. Each needs to be activated with a drop of blood from the user, nothing dark, just basic recognition magic." Draco accepted the pouch with a wry smile. "Never thought I'd see the day when Harry Potter asked me to distribute unregistered currency. Never thought I'd see the day when you'd be one of the few people I could trust," Harry retorted. "I wouldn't go that far, Potter." But Draco's tone lacked its usual edge. "What's your endgame here? You can't hide in Gringotts forever. Phase 1 is establishing the alternative economy," Harry explained. "Phase 2 is exposing Thornwood's real agenda. Phase 3. He shrugged. "We're working on that." "Typical Potter planning," Draco muttered. "All heroics, no strategy." "That's why I need allies with Slytherin cunning," Harry replied pointedly. Draco considered this, then nodded once. "I'll discuss it with Father. If he agrees, you'll have the Malfoy network." "Thank you," Harry said sincerely. "Don't thank me yet." Draco glanced around warily. "Thornwood's people are watching our manor. Getting these coins distributed without detection won't be easy." Use the activation phrase, "mischief managed," when you're ready, Harry instructed. A goblin contact will find you for further coordination. Draco raised an eyebrow. A marauder reference? Subtle, Potter. Harry grinned. Knew you'd catch that. Voices approached on the main path, a patrol, by the sound of it. Draco stepped back. Go. I'll create a distraction if needed. Harry nodded, reapplying his disillusionment charm. Watch for tomorrow's quibbler. And Malfoy, be careful. Always am, Potter. Draco straightened his cloak. Unlike some Gryffindors I know. As Harry slipped away, he heard Draco deliberately making noise, then calling out to the patrol, "Hello? Is someone there? I thought I saw movement near the shack." Perfect misdirection. Perhaps this unlikely alliance would work after all. Harry's return journey to Gringotts was tense but uneventful. The increased aura presence made him take a longer route, but the goblin tunnels proved as secure as promised. By the time he re-emerged into the bank's lower levels, dawn was approaching. Silvermark met him at the tunnel entrance. Successful? Malfoy took the coins, Harry confirmed. He's considering the alliance. Good. The director is waiting with news. Nagnock's office was a hive of activity when Harry arrived. Goblins hurried in and out with reports, while magical displays showed financial data shifting in real time. Ah, Mr. Potter. Nagnock looked up from a document he was signing. Your timing is excellent. The first phase of our plan has exceeded expectations. What's happened? Harry asked. Minister Thornwood has just declared a state of financial emergency. Nagnock handed him a copy of an emergency profit edition. The ministry is attempting to force Gringotts to reopen under government supervision. The headline screamed, Potter crisis sparks financial emergency. Below it, a photo showed concerned citizens gathered outside Gringotts' closed doors. They're still blaming me, Harry noted, scanning the article. Of course. You're the perfect scapegoat, Nagnock said pragmatically. But read the market indicators section. Harry flipped to the financial pages, where his enhanced understanding immediately grasped the significance of the numbers. Wizard businesses are already losing value. Confidence in ministry currency is dropping. He looked up, surprised. This happened faster than you predicted. Modern wizards have no experience with financial instability, Nagnock explained. Their panic accelerates the process. Silvermark handed Harry another report. The copper network has begun operations. 27 nodes activated overnight, with initial transactions already processing. Harry scanned the data, impressed by the speed of implementation. Any problems? Minor only. One overzealous aura attempted to inspect a node location, but our enchantments held. Silvermark looked satisfied. He saw nothing but an ordinary bookshop. And the love goods? Harry asked. Successfully supplied with copper currency and printing materials. Nagnock activated a magical projection showing copies of the Quibbler rolling off presses. First editions will hit the streets within hours. Luna had come through. Harry felt a surge of gratitude for her unwavering support. What's our next move? He asked. Nagnock's expression grew serious. Now comes the more difficult phase. Thornwood will not surrender economic control without a fight. His next move will likely be direct action against Gringotts. He wouldn't risk attacking the bank, Harry objected. That would violate every treaty. Not an overt attack, Silvermark clarified. But we've detected unusual magical activity in the Ministry's Department of Magical Engineering. They appear to be developing some form of ward-breaking apparatus. Harry frowned. To force entry to the bank? Precisely. Nagnock looked grim. Which means we must accelerate our timeline. The Council has approved the activation of Phase 2. The evidence against Thornwood? Harry asked, recalling their earlier discussions. Yes. And for that, we need your friend Miss Granger's assistance. Nagnock handed Harry a small copper sphere. This communication device will bypass ministry monitoring. If you can convince her to investigate the Department of Mystery's Financial Records Division, she'll find what we need. Harry weighed the sphere in his palm. Getting this to Hermione won't be easy. She'll be watched. We have a delivery method prepared, Silvermark assured him. But first, you need rest, Mr. Potter. You've been active for nearly 24 hours. Harry wanted to argue but couldn't deny his exhaustion. The day's events, combined with the magical exertion and stress, had drained him. A few hours, he agreed reluctantly. Wake me if anything significant changes. As he returned to his quarters, Harry paused to study the financial activity displays. All across Britain, lights were dimming as the ministry-controlled economy faltered. But new points were appearing, small at first, but growing steadily brighter as the copper network expanded. For the first time since his flight from the ministry, Harry felt genuinely hopeful. Thornwood had wealth and power, but he'd overlooked the resilience of those he sought to control. And he'd made a critical mistake in pushing Harry Potter into an alliance with the Masters of Wizard Gold. By morning, the revolution would be gaining momentum. And Harry would be ready to take the fight directly to those who had betrayed him. Chapter 2, Gold and Shadows. Harry woke to the sound of urgent voices outside his quarters. Sleep fell away instantly. Aura training had taught him to snap from unconscious to battle-ready in seconds. He grabbed his wand and was halfway to the door when Silvermark burst in without knocking. Potter, you need to see this. Her typically composed demeanor had cracked. That alone told Harry the situation had escalated. What's happened? He followed her through the warren of Gringotts' lower levels at a near run. Thornwood's made his move. She handed him the Morning Prophet as they walked. More aggressive than even Director Nagnock anticipated. The headline hit like a physical blow, Potter conspiracy wider than feared, Ministry invokes Magical Security Act. Below it, photos of Harry's friends moved in black and white loops, Hermione looking defiant as Aurors escorted her from the Ministry, Luna being led from the Quibbler's offices, even Neville standing protective before Hogwarts greenhouses as officials presented papers. They've arrested them? Harry's voice came out strangled. Not arrested. Temporarily detained for questioning regarding economic terrorism. Silvermark's disgust was evident. It's a rarely used clause in wizard law, allowing 72-hour holds without formal charges. Harry scanned the article, anger building with each paragraph. Thornwood claimed a coordinated attack on wizard financial stability justified the detentions. The Quibbler had been shut down for spreading destabilizing misinformation. This is about Luna's expose, Harry realized. Did any copies make it to the public? Yes, Silvermark confirmed. Early editions circulated for approximately 3 hours before Aurors seized the premises. We estimate 5,000 copies reached readers. They arrived at Nagnock's strategy room, now transformed into what resembled a war room. Magical displays showed economic data, aura movements, and communication networks. Dozens of goblins worked at various stations, coordinating what appeared to be a nationwide operation. Potter. Nagnock looked up from a conference with senior goblins. The situation evolves rapidly. I can see that. Harry indicated the prophet. My friends are being detained because of me. Not because of you, Nagnock corrected. Because they threaten Thornwood's narrative. Miss Lovegood's article was remarkably effective. He gestured to a display showing public sentiment metrics, magical gauges measuring wizard opinions across Britain. One labeled, Ministry Trust, had fallen significantly since yesterday. The Quibbler revealed financial connections between Thornwood and Goblin artifact black markets, Silvermark explained. Plus details on the economic control mechanisms he's implementing. The public response was immediate. Harry felt a conflicted mix of pride in Luna and worry for her safety. Where are they being held? Ministry holding cells, Nagnok replied. But our intelligence suggests they're being treated well. Thornwood can't risk mistreating popular figures. We need to get them out, Harry insisted. And we will, but rash action would be counterproductive. Nagnok gestured to another display showing Diagon Alley, where crowds had gathered. Look at what's happening. The scene showed wizards and witches in heated discussions, many waving copies of the Quibbler. Several shops appeared closed, with signs reading, "No Ministry scrip accepted," or, "Closed until Gringotts reopens." Thornwood's financial emergency measures are backfiring, Silvermark explained. The paper currency he introduced isn't being trusted. And your friend's detentions are creating martyrs. Meanwhile, Nagnok added, our copper network expanded threefold overnight. The economic map showed bright copper points spreading across Britain like a constellation. The Malfoys have been particularly effective distributors. Harry raised an eyebrow. Draco moved that quickly. Never underestimate self-interest as motivation, Nagnok remarked. The old families recognize an existential threat when they see one. A messenger goblin entered with a sealed note. Nagnok read it, then passed it to Harry. From your Mr. Malfoy. Harry unfolded the parchment. Potter, Father fully committed to our arrangement. Copper currency distributed through our network of apothecaries and importers. Ministry officials attempted inspection of manor finances this morning, our Singapore transfers completed just hours before. Pansy Parkinson now operating distribution hub in Nocturne. Blaze handling international contacts. Significant interest from French and German magical banking concerns. Granger being held separately from others. Weasley looking troubled during last shift change. Potential ally. MPS. This communication method remains secure. Use same channel for response. Harry looked up. Ron's having doubts. That's something. The Auror Weasley has been reviewing evidence files repeatedly, Silvermark confirmed. Our source in the DMLE reports he's requested original trace records from your office. Hope flickered. If Ron was questioning the evidence, perhaps their friendship wasn't completely lost. What about Hermione being held separately? Nagnok and Silvermark exchanged looks. That concerns us, Nagnok admitted. It suggests Thornwood considers her particularly dangerous, or useful. We need to get a message to her, Harry decided. The communication sphere you mentioned, can we still deliver it? Yes, but the risk has increased. Silvermark brought forward a small case containing the copper sphere from the previous day. We have an agent who can attempt delivery during meal service. Harry took the sphere, concentrating as he pressed his thumb to its surface. The metal warmed, accepting a magical imprint that would ensure only Hermione could activate it. Tell her I need her to access the Department of Mysteries financial records, he instructed. Specifically anything connecting Thornwood to account transfers before he became minister. Silvermark took the sphere back. I'll ensure it's delivered today. Now, Nagnok said, turning to a large tactical display, we must address Thornwood's next likely move. Our intelligence suggests he's preparing to invoke treaty override powers, a ministry contingency that would allow him to install government controllers at Gringotts. Can he do that? Harry asked, alarmed. Not legally, Nagnok growled. But legality hasn't constrained him thus far. The director gestured to a timeline projection. We estimate 24 to 36 hours before he attempts direct action against the bank. Before then, we must expand the copper network to critical mass. Harry studied the projection. What's critical mass in this case? 30% of daily wizard commerce occurring outside ministry currency control, Silvermark explained. At that point, their economic leverage becomes significantly weakened. We're currently at 12%, Nagnok added. Accelerating, but not quickly enough. Harry thought for a moment. We need a catalyst, something that makes people lose faith in galleons completely. Like what? Silvermark asked. A slow smile spread across Harry's face. Like the boy who lived publicly renouncing ministry currency. 3 hours later, Harry stood in a secluded section of Knockturn Alley, adjusting the enchanted disguise Silvermark had crafted. Unlike Polyjuice, the goblin glamour worked by redirecting attention rather than changing appearance. Anyone looking directly at him would see an unremarkable wizard of indeterminate age. Remember, Nagnok instructed through a communication charm, the disguise holds only while you maintain the focusing thought. Emotional spikes will weaken it. Got it, Harry murmured. Stay calm, stay boring. He checked the magical recorder in his pocket, a modified pensive device that would capture and transmit his statement directly to the wireless wizarding network. The goblins had assured him they could override regular broadcasting for approximately 90 seconds, just enough time for his message. Copper Network reports all nodes standing by, Silvermark's voice reported. Malfoy agents in position throughout Diagon and Hogsmeade. Harry took a deep breath. Timing was critical. His broadcast needed to coincide precisely with the next phase, the revelation of Goblin-held evidence against Thornwood that Luna had only hinted at in her article. Activation in 3 minutes, Nagnok confirmed. The transmission will reach every wireless receiver in Britain simultaneously. Harry positioned himself before the blank wall they'd selected as backdrop, nondescript enough to prevent location identification. He rehearsed the key points mentally, fighting to keep his emotions controlled despite thinking about his friends in detention. 60 seconds, Nagnok announced. Harry rolled a copper coin across his knuckles, a focusing technique Silvermark had taught him to maintain the disguise. 30 seconds. He stilled his hand, pocketing the coin and standing straight. 10 seconds. Broadcasting begins in 5, 4, 3, 2. A soft chime indicated the recorder's activation. Harry looked directly into it, voice clear and steady. People of Wizarding Britain, this is Harry Potter. I am not what the Ministry has claimed. I've committed no blood magic, no financial crimes, no conspiracy. Minister Thornwood has fabricated these charges to seize control of our economy and suppress anyone who might challenge him. As we speak, my friends are detained without charges for telling the truth. Gringotts remains closed because the Ministry attempted to illegally seize assets. Your financial freedom is being stripped away while Thornwood consolidates power. But we have an alternative. The copper currency now circulating is beyond Ministry control, a fair exchange system managed by goblins with centuries of financial expertise. I've transferred all my assets into this new system, and I urge you to consider doing the same. For those who've supported me over the years, thank you. For those who doubt, ask yourselves why the Ministry fears free economic choice so much they detain respected citizens without charges. The evidence of Thornwood's corruption is being released publicly today. Review it yourselves. Make informed choices. Financial freedom is magical freedom. The recorder chimed again, indicating transmission completion. Harry exhaled slowly. Broadcast successful, Silvermark confirmed. All targets reached. Significant aura mobilization detected, another goblin reported. They're attempting to trace the signal. As expected, Nagnok said calmly. Return to base, Potter. Harry reactivated his disguise focus and slipped into the flowing foot traffic of Knockturn Alley. Around him, he could see the immediate effects of his broadcast, wizards huddled around portable wireless units, discussions erupting, some people reaching into pockets to examine copper coins they'd recently acquired. Outside Borgin and Burke's, a wizard in expensive robes was already conducting a transaction with copper currency, pointedly ignoring the Ministry notice forbidding unauthorized exchange media. Harry took a circuitous route back to the Goblin Tunnel entrance, twice passing aura patrols moving in the opposite direction. His disguise held, their eyes sliding past him without interest. At the hidden entrance, a goblin guard admitted him silently, securing the passage behind them. By the time Harry reached the main operations center, reports were already flowing in. Copper network transactions up 300% in the last 15 minutes, a goblin analyst announced. Ministry attempting emergency wireless address, signal experiencing technical difficulties, another reported with undisguised satisfaction. Nagnok met Harry at the center of the room, actually smiling, a somewhat terrifying sight given goblin dentition. Your broadcast exceeded expectations, Potter. Sentiment metrics are shifting rapidly. A large display showed real-time financial data, the ministry's emergency currency valuation dropping as copper gained acceptance. Magical businesses across Britain were making their choices known, many publicly announcing their acceptance of the alternative currency. Thornwood will retaliate, Harry cautioned, removing his disguise charm. Already beginning, Silvermark confirmed, joining them. Auror teams deployed to known copper network locations. Will our concealment hold? Harry asked. For standard detection methods, yes. Silvermark looked concerned. But they've deployed unspeakables with specialized detection equipment. That was worrying. Unspeakables had access to magical technology beyond conventional understanding. We need a distraction, Harry decided. Something to divide their resources. Nagnok nodded thoughtfully. The evidence release against Thornwood was scheduled for this evening, but we could accelerate. Do it, Harry agreed. Hit them from multiple directions. The director issued rapid instructions in gobbledygook. Moments later, magical transmissions began flowing from Gringotts to key distribution points, the Quibbler's underground printing operation, sympathetic wizarding wireless hosts, even the international magical press. Evidence deploying, Silvermark confirmed. First packages reaching distribution now. Harry watched the monitors as the information spread. Within minutes, the first international magical news services began broadcasting, breaking news from Britain, where financial documents appear to show Minister Thornwood embezzled war reparations intended for victims of Voldemort's regime. Goblin banking records indicate systematic diversion of funds from magical creature integration programs to private accounts connected to 3 senior ministry officials. Authenticated contracts reveal Thornwood's secret agreements with artifact black marketeers specializing in goblin-made items. The revelation cascade had begun. Harry felt a moment of grim satisfaction watching the carefully constructed public image of Acrobus Thornwood begin to crumble. Sir. A communications goblin called urgently to Nagnok. Priority message from our ministry source. Aurors are preparing to move against Gringotts directly. Estimated deployment in 1 hour. The room fell silent. Though they'd anticipated this escalation, the reality was still shocking. No minister had dared direct action against Gringotts in centuries. Defensive protocols activated, Nagnok ordered, his voice unnervingly calm. Seal all primary vaults. Deploy warders to the main entrances. Harry felt the bank shudder slightly as ancient defenses awakened. Through his goblin-enhanced financial senses, he detected massive magical energies shifting beneath them as Gringotts prepared for siege. What can I do? He asked Nagnok. Your most important role comes after their initial assault fails, the director replied. They expect goblin defenses. They don't expect Harry Potter with goblin financial magic at his disposal. A messenger approached with a copper communication sphere glowing urgently. Silvermark took it, pressing her palm against the surface to receive the message. It's from Granger, she announced, surprised. She's activated the sphere we delivered. Harry took the device, pressing his own palm to it. Hermione's voice emerged, hushed but clear. Harry, I've accessed the records you mentioned. Thornwood didn't just embezzle, he's implemented a tracking charm on all galleons minted since he took office. I found the spell matrix, it's linked to a monitoring system in the Department of Mysteries. They can track every transaction, every purchase. It's not just economic control, it's surveillance on an unprecedented scale. They're using my research without permission, the magical signature recognition work I did for artifact authentication. There's more. Thornwood has a second phase planned involving something called the Midas Protocol. I can't access those files yet. Be careful, they're planning something at Gringotts tonight. I'll try to learn more. The sphere went dark. Harry looked up at Nagnok and Silvermark, who had both heard the message. The Midas Protocol? Harry questioned. Nagnok's expression darkened. An old ministry contingency plan, theorized but never implemented. It would forcibly convert goblin magic to ministry control through a modified Imperius-based network. That's impossible, Harry objected. Magical beings can't be controlled that way en masse. Not directly, Silvermark explained grimly. But their magic can be channeled through specifically designed conduits. She hesitated. The theoretical basis came from studying how the Dark Mark functioned as a network. Harry felt ill. Thornwood's planning to essentially Death Eater mark the entire goblin nation. If this is truly the Midas Protocol, then yes, Nagnok confirmed. Though I doubted it existed beyond theoretical research. Hermione wouldn't be wrong about this, Harry said firmly. No, I imagine not. Nagnok turned to the tactical displays. This changes our defensive priorities. Silvermark, recalibrate our ward stones to detect Imperius variant magic specifically. As the goblins adjusted their defenses, Harry's mind raced. The situation had escalated beyond economic conflict to something far more sinister. Thornwood wasn't just consolidating power, he was preparing magical enslavement of an entire race. We need to warn the public, Harry decided. If people knew what Thornwood was planning, it would be dismissed as goblin propaganda, Nagnok interrupted. Without concrete evidence, wizards will not believe their ministry plans to enslave magical beings. Then we need that evidence, Harry insisted. Hermione found references, there must be documentation. Silvermark looked thoughtful. The Department of Mysteries would house the research materials. If Granger could access them, too dangerous, Harry cut in. She's already taking huge risks. There must be another way. A memory surfaced, something from his night of studying goblin financial magic. What about contractual invocation? Gringotts holds service contracts with the ministry, right? Nagnok's eyes widened slightly. Yes. Including magical disclosure clauses regarding any spells affecting financial instruments. So technically, Harry continued, excitement building, Thornwood's tracking charm on galleons violates your contract with the ministry. You could magically compel disclosure of all related programs. A slow, sharp-toothed smile spread across Nagnok's face. Including the Midas Protocol documentation, as it directly relates to currency control. He turned to a senior goblin. Prepare the contract vault. We're invoking Clause 17 of the Ministry Banking Agreement of 1804. As goblins rushed to implement the directive, Harry felt a momentary surge of hope. If they could expose Thornwood's full plan before his assault on Gringotts, the bank shuddered violently, magical alarms blaring. Perimeter breach, a security goblin shouted. Eastern tunnels. Impossible, Silvermark said. The main assault isn't due for almost an hour. This isn't the main assault, Nagnok realized, checking the security monitors. It's an advanced team. Unspeakables, using some form of detection-proof transport. The monitors showed dark-robed figures moving through maintenance tunnels, carrying devices Harry didn't recognize. They're placing something at junction points, Silvermark observed. Some kind of magical device. Nagnok's expression grew alarmed. The Midas Protocol conductors. They're establishing the network nodes before the main assault. I need to stop them, Harry decided instantly. Too dangerous, Nagnok objected. If they capture you, they won't. Harry was already checking his wand. I know those tunnels from the map you showed me. I can reach the nearest junction before they finish. Silvermark handed him a small copper disc. Take this. It will disrupt their devices if placed within 3 feet. Harry nodded, accepting the disc. Keep working on the contract invocation. If I can buy you time to expose Thornwood's plan publicly, it might prevent the main assault entirely. Without waiting for further objections, Harry disillusioned himself and headed for the maintenance access. Behind him, he heard Nagnok issuing orders to continue defensive preparations while simultaneously preparing the contractual magic. The tunnels were dimly lit, ancient stonework occasionally inscribed with goblin runes. Harry moved silently, grateful for his aura training in covert operations. He could sense the intruders ahead, not visually, but through the strange financial magic sensitivity his goblin binding had granted. The devices they carried emanated a distorted magical signature that felt wrong, like discordant notes in a melody. At a junction, Harry paused, listening. Voices echoed from a connecting passage, placed at points 7 and 12. This is 13. Hurry up. We've got 10 minutes before they detect the magical signature. Relax. By then it won't matter. Once activated, not even their ward stones can stop it. Harry peered carefully around the corner. Two unspeakables in hooded robes were positioning a device against the wall, a metallic sphere embedded with what appeared to be forced extraction runes similar to those used in breaking curses on ancient tombs. He weighed his options. He could stun them both, but that would alert their team that someone was interfering. Better to let them finish, then disable the device after they left. Harry waited, barely breathing, as they completed the installation. Magically inert until activation, 1 confirmed. Proceeding to junction 14. Only after their footsteps faded did Harry approach the device. Up close, it was even more disturbing, the runes pulsed faintly, and he could feel its latent purpose through his enhanced senses. This was designed to enslave goblin magic, to forcibly redirect it through ministry control channels. Harry carefully placed Silvermark's copper disc near the sphere. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the disc glowed brightly before seeming to melt into the stonework itself. The device's runes flickered and went dark. 1 down. But how many others were being placed throughout Gringotts? Harry pressed his palm to the communication charm Nagnok had given him. First device neutralized. How many teams are you detecting? 3 teams, Nagnok's voice replied quietly. 12 junctions targeted. I can't reach them all in time, Harry realized. Focus on the primary nodes, junctions 13 through 16. Those form the central activation network. Harry moved quickly to the next junction, finding a similar device already installed but unattended. Again, he applied Silvermark's countermeasure, watching with satisfaction as the malicious magic faded. At the third junction, he wasn't so fortunate. As he rounded the corner, he came face to face with an unspeakable adjusting a device. Both froze in momentary surprise. The hooded figure recovered first, wand slashing upward. Intruder at junction 15. Harry's disillusionment shattered as he ducked the silent curse, responding with a non-verbal Expelliarmus that the unspeakable barely deflected. Potter, the figure hissed in recognition. Alert all teams, Potter is in the tunnels. Harry abandoned stealth for speed, casting a blasting curse at the ceiling between them. Stone debris crashed down, temporarily blocking pursuit, but he knew his presence was now reported. Cover blown, he reported through the communication charm. Unspeakables know I'm here. Return immediately, Nagnok ordered. They'll concentrate forces to capture you. Harry hesitated, glancing at the junction ahead where the 4th primary node would be placed. 1 more. I can reach junction 16. Potter, that's an order. The main assault force has mobilized early, they're approaching the front entrance now. The bank trembled again, more violently than before. The main attack had begun. Harry made his decision in an instant. Sending you my location. Deploy a team to finish neutralizing these devices. I'm heading for the front to help with defense. He marked his position magically before racing toward the main hall. Throughout the bank, he could feel defenses activating, ancient goblin wards designed to repel wizard invasion. But if Thornwood's forces managed to activate even a partial Midas protocol network, those defenses might be compromised from within. As Harry neared the grand entrance hall, the sounds of magical combat reached him, spell fire, shouted incantations, and the deeper resonance of goblin defensive magic. He slowed at the final corner, peering cautiously into the main chamber. The scene was chaos. At least 30 aurors and what appeared to be hit wizards were attempting to breach the main doors, their spells colliding with goblin ward stones that glowed fierce blue with protective magic. Goblins in battle armor, a sight Harry had never witnessed, were defending key positions, using magic unlike anything taught at Hogwarts. Rather than individual spells, the goblins worked in coordinated teams, channeling power through the metal of the bank itself. Gold veins in the marble floor pulsed with energy, occasionally erupting to form barriers or offensive strikes against the invaders. Harry spotted Nagnock on a raised platform, directing the defense with calm precision. Silvermark stood nearby, coordinating what appeared to be a communication network of goblin runners delivering updates from throughout the bank. He needed to reach them, but crossing the open floor meant exposing himself to the full aura force. Harry studied the battle pattern, looking for, there. A momentary rhythm in the spell exchange, a 3-second window where attention focused on the main doors. Harry waited for the pattern to repeat, then sprinted across the chamber during the brief lull. A shout went up as someone spotted him, spells immediately redirecting his way. He slid behind a marble column as curses shattered stone where he'd been standing moments before. "Potter's here," someone yelled. "West side of the chamber. Focus on the wards," a commanding voice countered. "Potter is secondary." Harry recognized that voice with a jolt. Gawain Robards, head of the Auror office, his former boss and mentor. The realization that Robards was personally leading the assault stung more than it should have. "Potter." Silvermark had spotted him. She gestured urgently toward a service door behind Nagnock's position. Harry nodded, calculating his next move. The fighting had intensified, making any dash more dangerous. He needed a distraction. Remembering a trick from his Auror training, Harry transfigured a piece of broken marble into a reasonable facsimile of his glasses, then charmed it to fly in an arc toward the opposite side of the chamber. As it soared across the room, he cast a delayed illusion spell on it. The moment it landed, the illusion activated, a flash of light and a smoky approximation of Harry appearing to run toward a side passage. As expected, several aurors immediately redirected their attention. "There he goes. East corridor." In the confusion, Harry made his move, sprinting to the service door where Silvermark waited. Spells chased him, but the goblin defenders provided covering fire, metallic shields erupting from the floor to block the worst of the curses. He dove through the doorway, Silvermark sealing it instantly behind him. "Cutting it rather close," she observed dryly. "Seemed like you could use a hand," Harry replied, catching his breath. "What's the situation?" "Not good," Silvermark admitted, leading him quickly through a back passage toward Nagnock's position. "Their ward breakers are more advanced than we anticipated. Main entrance defenses will fail within 20 minutes at current rates." They reached Nagnock, who acknowledged Harry with a curt nod while continuing to direct the defense. "Tunnels?" Harry asked. "Your warning was timely," Nagnock replied without looking up from the tactical display. "We neutralized 9 of the 12 devices. The remaining 3 are insufficient to establish the full Midas network, but they could still cause localized disruption." "What about the contract invocation?" Harry pressed. "Did you manage to activate it?" Now Nagnock did look up, a fierce gleam in his yellow eyes. "Active and spreading. The contractual magic is compelling disclosure throughout the ministry as we speak. Every document related to the Midas Protocol is duplicating itself and appearing in public spaces, the atrium, the Wizengamot chambers, international embassies." Despite the dire situation, Harry felt a surge of triumph. "So the evidence is public?" "Beyond even Thornwood's ability to suppress," Nagnock confirmed. "The international magical community is already responding. The French and German ministries have issued formal condemnations. But it won't stop this attack in time," Silvermark added grimly. She was right. The invading force wouldn't abandon their assault just because their motives were exposed. If anything, it might make Thornwood more desperate to seize control of Gringotts before international pressure could be organized against him. We need a more immediate solution, Harry said, thinking quickly. What if we turned their own plan against them? Nagnok raised a bushy eyebrow. Explain. The Midas Protocol devices, they're designed to redirect magical energy, right? What if we could reverse the polarity, make them channel magic outward instead of capturing it? Silvermark looked skeptical. Those devices are specifically calibrated. Reversing them would require blood magic, Harry interrupted. Real blood magic, not the fake stuff they accused me of. Both goblins stared at him. You're proposing to use actual blood magic in defense of Gringotts? Nagnok asked carefully. I'm proposing to use my blood, freely given, to protect your people, Harry clarified. There's a difference. After a moment's consideration, Nagnok nodded. There is indeed a difference, and a significant one in magical terms. He turned to Silvermark. Bring one of the neutralized devices. And summon a ritual team. As Silvermark hurried away, Harry felt the bank shudder again, the Auror's assault intensifying. Wardstone 3 failing, a goblin reported urgently. Redirect power from secondary vaults, Nagnok ordered. Maintain the integrity of the main seal at all costs. Harry watched the battle through magical monitoring charms. The invading force had grown, at least 50 wizards now, including specialists he recognized from the Department of Magical Law Enforcement's elite units. They were systematically targeting the goblin defenses, with a precision that suggested detailed inside knowledge. They knew exactly how to attack, he observed. Someone gave them information about your defense systems. Yes, Nagnok agreed grimly. We have a traitor among us, or had. They've gone silent since the assault began. Silvermark returned with a goblin carrying one of the disabled Midas devices and 3 others wearing ceremonial armor. The ritual team, she explained, placing the device on a stone table that had risen from the floor at Nagnok's command. Time is short, Nagnok told Harry. The ritual is simple but powerful. Your blood will redirect the device's purpose, using its own design against the Ministry forces. What exactly will it do? Harry asked, wanting to be clear about what he was agreeing to. Instead of capturing goblin magic, it will temporarily disrupt all Ministry-authorized magic within Gringotts, Silvermark explained. Their spells will fail, their enchanted devices cease functioning. Including their wand cores? Harry clarified. No, those are natural magical conduits. But any spell cast using Ministry-approved methods will falter. Which meant the Aurors could still fight, but their specialized equipment and coordinated magical assaults would be neutralized. It would level the playing field significantly. Let's do it. The ritual was indeed simple, though Harry suspected its effects would be anything but. The goblin team positioned the device in the center of a hastily drawn array of symbols. Nagnok produced a silver ritual knife, not unlike the one Wormtail had used in the graveyard years ago, a comparison Harry tried to push from his mind. 7 drops only, Nagnok instructed. Freely given, with clear intent. Harry extended his palm. I freely give my blood to protect Gringotts and its people from those who would enslave them. The knife was sharp enough that he barely felt the cut. 7 drops of blood fell onto the device, where they didn't splash but seemed to be absorbed directly into the metal. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the runes etched into the sphere began to glow, not the sickly yellow of before, but a deep, resonant red that pulsed like a heartbeat. The goblin ritual team began chanting in gobbledygook, their voices creating a harmonic pattern that made the air itself vibrate. The sphere rose, hovering a foot above the table, spinning slowly as the red glow intensified. Suddenly, it shot upward, passing through the solid stone ceiling as though it were mist. What's happening? Harry asked, watching it disappear. It seeks the center point of the bank, Nagnok explained. From there, it will expand to create a field effect throughout Gringotts. Moments later, a deep rumble shook the entire building. A wave of magic, visible as a rippling distortion in the air, spread outward from the center of the bank. As it passed over them, Harry felt a brief tingling sensation, but nothing more. In the main chamber, however, the effect was dramatic. Through the monitoring charms, Harry watched as the Ministry forces suddenly faltered. Coordinated spell chains disintegrated. Enchanted battering rams trying to breach the main doors went inert. Communication devices sparked and died. Confusion spread through the attacking wizards as their carefully planned assault collapsed into disarray. Now, Nagnok commanded, counterattack. The goblin defenders moved with renewed coordination, their magic unaffected by the disruption field. Gold and silver elements in the bank's structure animated under their control, forming barriers and containment fields that began systematically isolating groups of invaders. "It's working," Harry observed as the Ministry forces fell back in disorganized retreat. "For now," Silvermark cautioned. "The effect will last approximately 1 hour. After that, they could regroup." "They won't have the chance," Nagnok stated confidently. "International representatives are already arriving at the Ministry. Thornwood's political support is collapsing as we speak." A communication sphere activated near Nagnok, projecting the voice of a goblin agent. "Director, Minister Thornwood has barricaded himself in his office. The Wisengamot has called an emergency session to vote on removal from office. Auror Command is in disarray, half the force is standing down, claiming they were misled about the operation's purpose." The tide was turning. Harry allowed himself a moment of hope, watching through the monitors as more and more Aurors abandoned the assault. Some were clearly shocked, speaking heatedly with their commanders, gesturing in apparent protest. They didn't know, Harry realized. Most of the Aurors had no idea what Thornwood was really planning. "Of course not," Nagnok agreed. "Few wizards would willingly participate in the magical enslavement of another race, not after Voldemort. Thornwood likely told them this was about capturing a dangerous fugitive and securing financial stability." A familiar figure on the monitors caught Harry's attention, tall, red-haired, arguing vehemently with a senior officer. "Ron," he breathed. Silvermark enhanced the image, allowing them to see the confrontation more clearly. Ron Weasley was furiously gesturing toward the bank, his face set in the stubborn expression Harry knew so well. The officer attempted to interrupt, but Ron overrode him, pointing at documents he held, likely the Midas Protocol evidence now circulating throughout the Ministry. Finally, Ron simply turned his back on the officer, tossed down what appeared to be an Auror badge, and walked away from the assault force. "Your friend appears to have made his choice," Nagnok observed. Harry felt a complicated mix of emotions, relief, vindication, and lingering hurt that it had taken so long. But mostly, he was proud. Ron had ultimately chosen what was right over what was easy. "The assault force is withdrawing," a Goblin security officer reported. "Ministry personnel are requesting formal cessation of hostilities." Nagnok looked to Harry. "It seems the immediate crisis is passing." "Thornwood is still minister," Harry cautioned. "For perhaps the next few hours," Silvermark noted, reviewing incoming intelligence. "The Wisengamot vote is being expedited. International pressure is immense." "And our friends? The detained?" "Release orders already processed for most," Nagnok confirmed. "Though Miss Granger appears to be coordinating her own liberation." He gestured to a monitor showing the Ministry detention area, where Hermione could be seen organizing what appeared to be the other detainees into an impromptu legal committee. Harry couldn't help but smile. Even in custody, Hermione remained Hermione. "So we've won?" he asked cautiously. "This battle, perhaps," Nagnok replied. "But the larger conflict continues. The wizarding economy remains in crisis. Trust in institutions has been severely damaged. And that's where the real opportunity lies," Harry realized. "This isn't just about stopping Thornwood, it's about building something better." Nagnok studied him with new interest. Continue. The copper currency network has proven viable. People trust it more than ministry galleons now. What if instead of simply returning to the old system once Thornwood is gone, we established something more equitable? A financial system with both goblin and wizard oversight, transparent rules, and protections for all magical beings. The idea had been forming in Harry's mind throughout the crisis, a way to prevent another Thornwood from rising through economic control. Ambitious, Nagnok commented, neither approving nor dismissing. But possible, Silvermark added thoughtfully. The crisis has created an opening for significant reform. It would require cooperation unprecedented in goblin-wizard relations, Nagnok pointed out. Harry gestured around them. Like what we've just achieved. Goblins and wizards working together defeated Thornwood when neither could have succeeded alone. Before Nagnok could respond, alarms sounded again, but different from before. Not warning of attack, but of unexpected magic within the bank. Breach in the upper vaults, a security goblin called. Unauthorized portkey activation. Impossible, Silvermark objected. Anti-portkey wards are at maximum strength. The security monitor shifted to show a vault corridor where a swirl of magical energy was forming. A figure materialized, tall, silver-haired, wearing ministerial robes now torn and disheveled. Thornwood, Harry recognized instantly. How did he penetrate our defenses? Nagnok demanded. Silvermark was already analyzing the magical signature. Modified transportation, part portkey, part apparition, and something else, something using the Midas conductors we didn't neutralize. He's desperate, Harry realized. The Wisengamot must be close to voting him out. He's come for whatever he can salvage. On the monitor, Thornwood was moving purposefully toward a specific vault, casting complex unlocking spells as he went. Vault 711, Nagnok identified. One of our secure document repositories. It contains. His yellow eyes widened in alarm. The original treaties of 1612 and 1734, the director finished. The magical foundation of goblin independence. Harry understood immediately. If he destroys those, what happens? Chaos, Silvermark answered grimly. The magical bindings between our nations would unravel. The ministry could claim emergency powers to restore order, by assuming direct control of Gringotts. Even with Thornwood removed as minister? Harry asked. The documents predate the modern ministry. Their destruction would create a magical power vacuum that any minister could exploit. Nagnok was already moving toward the door. We must stop him. Harry followed, Silvermark and a security team close behind. They raced through the bank toward the upper vaults, magical alarms continuing to sound throughout the building. Can't you lock down the vault remotely? Harry asked as they ran. Normally, yes, Nagnok replied. But he's using something to override our systems, likely derived from the Midas technology. They reached the upper levels to find evidence of Thornwood's passage, goblin guards stunned, security measures disabled with brutal efficiency. The minister had clearly abandoned all pretense of legality. At Vault 711, the massive door stood partially open, magical locks disrupted. From within came the sound of frantic movement and a voice muttering spells. Harry peered carefully around the edge of the doorway. Thornwood stood before an ornate pedestal where ancient parchments lay protected under magical barriers. The minister's wand moved in complex patterns as he attempted to dismantle the final protections. I can't believe he made it this far, Silvermark whispered. Our vault defenses should have stopped him. Unless he had helped designing the Midas protocol specifically to counter them, Harry suggested. Nagnok's expression darkened. Our traitor. We need to distract him, Harry decided. I'll draw his attention. You secure the treaties. Before Nagnok could object, Harry stepped into the vault doorway, wand raised. It's over, Thornwood. The minister whirled, his once handsome face contorted with rage and desperation. Potter. I should have known you'd be here, interfering again. Step away from the treaties, Harry ordered calmly. Thornwood laughed bitterly. Or what? You'll arrest me? I'm still Minister of Magic. For about another 10 minutes, Harry countered. The Wizengamot is voting as we speak. International representatives are already at the ministry. The Midas Protocol has been exposed. Something ugly flashed across Thornwood's face. You understand nothing, Potter. The protocol was for the greater good, a way to finally bring goblin magic under proper regulation. Their financial control has gone unchecked for centuries. You mean you couldn't corrupt them like you did the ministry, Harry retorted. Couldn't buy goblin loyalty with embezzled galleons. Thornwood's wand twitched. Always the self-righteous hero. What do you know of governing? Of maintaining order? The wizarding world needs structure, control. It needs freedom, Harry countered. Economic and magical. What it doesn't need is another would-be dictator. From the corner of his eye, Harry noticed Nagnock and Silvermark quietly moving along the vault's perimeter, approaching the treaties from behind Thornwood. He needed to keep the minister's attention fixed on him. You know what your real mistake was? Harry asked, taking a step forward. Using me as your scapegoat. If you'd targeted someone else, anyone else, you might have succeeded. But people have a habit of believing me when it matters. Thornwood's eyes narrowed. An error I won't repeat. Once these treaties are gone, I'll have emergency authority regardless of the Wizengamot's vote. And my first act will be making the boy who lived disappear permanently. His wand slashed upward. Harry was ready, shield charm blocking the curse and countering with a stunning spell that Thornwood barely deflected. The duel erupted with vicious intensity, spells rebounding off vault walls and shattering display cases. Harry fought defensively, keeping Thornwood's attention while the goblins worked their way closer to the treaties. You fight well for someone trained to enforce laws, not break them, Thornwood taunted, casting a particularly nasty cutting curse. Harry sidestepped, returning fire with a bludgeoning hex. And you fight dirty for a minister who claimed to stand for justice. Their battle had destroyed much of the vault's interior, but Thornwood was skilled, more skilled than Harry had anticipated. The minister fought with the desperation of a man who knew he had nothing to lose, making him both dangerous and unpredictable. A blasting curse caught Harry off guard, throwing him against a stone column. His head rang with the impact, vision blurring momentarily. Thornwood pressed his advantage, curses flying in rapid succession. I studied your dueling style, Potter, the minister called. Prepared for this confrontation. Did you think I wouldn't? Harry rolled behind a fallen cabinet, buying himself seconds to recover. Thornwood had indeed analyzed his fighting patterns, countering his preferred spells before Harry could complete them. Time for something unexpected. Instead of casting directly at Thornwood, Harry aimed at the ceiling above him. Aguamenti Maxima. A torrent of water burst from his wand, soaking the stone ceiling. Before Thornwood could determine his strategy, Harry followed with, Glacius. The water flash froze, creating dozens of ice daggers that dropped toward the minister. Thornwood conjured a shield, but the frozen projectiles split around it, forcing him to dive sideways, directly into Nagnock's line of sight. The director seized the opportunity. A burst of goblin magic, sharp and metallic, struck Thornwood from behind, binding him in chains of liquid gold that solidified on contact. No! Thornwood roared, struggling against the bonds. I am the minister. You cannot, former minister, interrupted a new voice from the vault entrance. Harry turned to see Kingsley Shacklebolt standing there, accompanied by several Aurors including, to Harry's immense relief, Ron Weasley. The Wizengamot vote concluded 5 minutes ago, Kingsley continued, approaching Thornwood's bound form. I've been appointed acting minister pending elections. Thornwood's face contorted with rage. Shacklebolt. You're making a terrible mistake. The goblins cannot be allowed to maintain their stranglehold on our economy. That will be for diplomatic negotiations to determine, Kingsley replied evenly. Not unilateral action and certainly not through magical enslavement. He turned to the Aurors. Take him to holding. Full anti-magic restraints. As they moved to secure Thornwood, Ron broke away, approaching Harry with a mixture of determination and shame on his face. Harry, not now, Harry interrupted, not unkindly. We'll talk later. Right now, there's still work to do. Ron nodded, relief visible in his expression. Hermione's organizing the release of everyone detained. She's also salvaged evidence from Thornwood's office, financial records going back years. That's our Hermione, Harry said with a smile. Kingsley joined them as the Aurors escorted Thornwood from the vault. Potter. It seems I owe you an apology on behalf of the Ministry. And thanks on behalf of the wizarding world. Again. Harry shook his head. I wasn't alone. Without the Goblins, Thornwood would have succeeded. An alliance I'm both surprised by and grateful for, Kingsley acknowledged, turning to Nagnok, who was now supervising the restoration of the treaties to their proper security measures. Director, the Ministry requests formal peace negotiations at your earliest convenience. Nagnok completed his work before responding. Minister Shacklebolt, Gringotts acknowledges your request. However, circumstances have changed significantly. Our negotiations must address not just peace, but comprehensive reform. Reform? Kingsley inquired. Harry stepped forward. The current crisis revealed fundamental flaws in how our economy functions, flaws Thornwood exploited but didn't create. We have an opportunity to build something better. Kingsley studied him thoughtfully. You have specific proposals in mind. We do, Harry confirmed, glancing at Nagnok, who nodded his agreement. Starting with a new banking accord that provides transparency, representation for all magical beings, and protection against the kind of economic manipulation Thornwood attempted. Ambitious, Kingsley noted, unconsciously echoing Nagnok's earlier assessment. Necessary, Harry countered. The copper currency network has proven that alternatives are possible. People have seen that the old system made them vulnerable. Kingsley considered this, then nodded slowly. I've learned not to underestimate you, Potter. Present your proposals formally, and I'll ensure they receive proper consideration. There's something else, Harry added. The charges against me, already being expunged, Kingsley assured him. Your record will be cleared completely. It was a start. But as Harry looked around the damaged vault, physical evidence of how close they'd come to disaster, he knew the real work was just beginning. Rebuilding trust between magical communities would be harder than defeating Thornwood. But for the first time in days, the path forward seemed clear. The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. Harry divided his time between Gringotts, where he worked with Nagnok on financial reform proposals, and the Ministry, where Kingsley had established a special commission to investigate the full extent of Thornwood's corruption. Hermione, predictably, had thrown herself into the legal aspects, drafting new regulations to prevent future abuse of economic power. Her office at the Department of Magical Law Enforcement had become the de facto headquarters for what the Daily Prophet was now calling the Financial Revolution. Luna's Quibbler had resumed publication with tremendous success, its circulation tripling as it provided the most detailed coverage of the crisis and its aftermath. Her particular blend of unconventional thinking and unflinching truth-telling resonated with a public now suspicious of official narratives. Ron had resigned from the Aurors, a decision that surprised Harry until Ron explained his reasoning over drinks at the Leaky Cauldron, newly reopened and proudly accepting both traditional galleons and copper currency. I joined to make a difference, Ron had said, staring into his butterbeer. But Thornwood showed how easily the system can be corrupted from within. I couldn't stay and pretend it was just one bad minister. What will you do instead? Harry had asked. Ron's response had been unexpected but fitting. Fred and George always said I had a head for strategy. I'm joining Bill in curse breaking, but focusing on financial security. Turns out there's huge demand for people who can protect assets from magical tampering. Now, 3 weeks after Thornwood's arrest, Harry stood in a restored Gringotts lobby, watching as magical beings of all types conducted business under the new interim protocols. Goblins worked alongside wizard financial advisors. Centaur representatives discussed investment opportunities with vampire banking consortiums. A werewolf financial cooperative was establishing credit lines previously denied them. Quite the transformation, observed Draco Malfoy, appearing beside Harry. Father is simultaneously impressed and appalled. Harry smiled. How's the Singapore arrangement working out? Spectacularly, Draco admitted. Our assets have actually increased in value now that they're part of the international magical banking network. Father's considering permanent relocation. Britain has become uncomfortably egalitarian for his tastes. And you? Harry asked curiously. Draco studied the diverse crowd thoughtfully. I find I'm adapting better than expected. There's opportunity in change, after all. Their unlikely alliance had evolved into something approaching friendship, not close, but built on mutual respect that would have been unimaginable in their school days. Potter. Nagnock approached, accompanied by Silvermark. The final draft is ready for your review before tomorrow's presentation. Harry nodded, turning back to Draco. Duty calls. Save the world again, Potter, Draco replied with a sardonic smile. It's what you do best. In Nagnock's office, Harry reviewed the comprehensive proposal they would present to the International Confederation of Wizards the following day, a new financial accord that would fundamentally reshape magical economics. The dual currency system is the cornerstone, Silvermark explained, highlighting sections of the document. Traditional galleons for those who prefer them, copper currency for those who value privacy and flexibility. Both legally recognized, both protected by transparent regulations. And the representation provisions? Harry asked. Nagnock indicated a complex organizational chart. A financial oversight council with seats for all magical beings, goblin, wizard, centaur, even house elf representatives. No single group can establish policies without consensus. Harry nodded approvingly. And Hermione's transparency requirements? Incorporated fully, Silvermark confirmed. All financial institutions must disclose monitoring charms, tracking spells, or other surveillance mechanisms applied to currency or transactions. The proposal was revolutionary but practical, addressing the vulnerabilities Thornwood had exploited while creating opportunities for greater cooperation between magical communities. It won't be easy to implement, Harry acknowledged. There will be resistance from traditionalists. Already manifesting, Nagnock agreed. But public sentiment favors reform. The crisis opened eyes to possibilities many never considered. A knock at the door interrupted them. Silvermark answered it, returning with a copper communication sphere glowing with an incoming message. From Miss Granger, she announced, activating it. Hermione's voice emerged, excited and slightly breathless. Harry. The Wisingamot just approved the Criminal Redress Act. All those wrongfully detained during the crisis will receive full compensation, and more importantly, they've established the Independent Review Commission to evaluate ministry actions during emergencies. It's happening, Harry. Real change is happening. The sphere went dark. Harry couldn't help smiling at Hermione's enthusiasm, so characteristic of her when justice prevailed. Your friend has been remarkably effective, Nagnock observed. She's introduced 17 reform measures in 3 weeks. Hermione at full throttle is a force of nature, Harry agreed. Once she believes in something, she's unstoppable. Another knock, this time followed by a junior goblin entering with a copy of the Evening Prophet. Director, you'll want to see this. The headline made Harry's eyebrows rise. Copper Standard officially recognized, Minister Shacklebolt signs dual currency ACT earlier than expected, Nagnock commented, scanning the article. Shacklebolt must have expedited the process. Political calculation, Silvermark suggested. He's solidifying reform credentials before the election. Or he genuinely believes it's right, Harry countered. Kingsley was always one of the good ones. Perhaps both, Nagnock allowed. In any case, this strengthens our position for tomorrow's ICW presentation. Harry checked his watch, a new Goblin-crafted model that tracked both financial market fluctuations and time. Speaking of which, I should prepare. Luna's meeting me at 7 to discuss media strategy. Nagnock's expression turned knowing. Miss Lovegood has become a frequent visitor to Gringotts lately. Often when you happen to be here. Harry felt warmth creep into his cheeks. She's covering the financial reforms for the Quibbler. Of course, Nagnock replied, not bothering to hide his skepticism. Purely professional interest. The truth was more complicated. In the week since the crisis, Harry and Luna had grown closer, their shared experiences creating a bond that was evolving into something neither had fully defined yet. Her unwavering support during his darkest moments had affected him deeply. Her unique perspective helped him navigate the complex political waters he now found himself swimming in. "We're having dinner at that new place in Diagon Alley," Harry admitted. "The one that only accepts copper currency." The balanced scales, Silvermark identified. "An excellent choice. Their chef trained with both house elves and human culinary masters." Harry gathered his notes on tomorrow's presentation. "I should go. Final review meeting at 9 tomorrow before the ICW session." Nagnock nodded. "We'll be ready." As Harry left Gringotts, stepping into the evening bustle of Diagon Alley, he marveled at how much had changed in just a month. The street hummed with activity, shops open late, people conducting business without fear, open displays of copper currency alongside traditional galleons. The economic crisis had become an opportunity for transformation. What began as his personal fight for survival had evolved into something much more significant, a fundamental reshaping of wizard-goblin relations and the magical economy itself. He spotted Luna waiting outside the balanced scales, her radish earrings catching the light as she waved enthusiastically. The sight made something warm bloom in his chest. "Harry. I've been reading about Bolivian salt flat economics. It's fascinating how they manage value exchange without centralized currency. I think there might be applications for our copper network expansion." Harry smiled, taking her hand as they entered the restaurant. Some things hadn't changed, Luna would always be wonderfully, brilliantly Luna. "Tell me everything," he said, genuinely interested. "And then I want your thoughts on tomorrow's presentation." As they settled at their table, discussing economic theory and reform strategies with the same energy others might discuss Quidditch, Harry reflected on the strange journey that had brought him here. From hunted fugitive to economic revolutionary in the span of a month. Sometimes betrayal opened doors to possibilities you'd never considered. Sometimes being hunted forced you to find unexpected allies. And sometimes, collapsing an entire economic system was exactly what was needed to build a better one. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The International Confederation. Lingering resistance from traditionalists. The complex process of implementing reforms across a society resistant to change. But tonight, sharing ideas with Luna in a restaurant that wouldn't have existed a month ago, Harry Potter was exactly where he needed to be. Chapter 3, The Reckoning Balance. Harry gripped the podium edges as flashbulbs exploded across the International Confederation of Wizards' Grand Chamber. 200 delegates from magical governments worldwide stared back at him, some curious, some hostile, all paying rapt attention to the wizard who'd collapsed Britain's magical economy. "The proposal before you isn't just about banking reform," Harry said, voice steady despite his racing heart. "It's about correcting centuries of imbalance between magical communities." He gestured to Nagnock, who activated a complex magical projection, a three-dimensional model of their proposed financial system hovering above the assembly floor. For too long, wizard governments have monopolized financial authority while benefiting from goblin expertise. The dual currency approach creates balance, traditional galleons under transparent oversight, and copper currency enabling privacy and accessibility for all magical beings. A Japanese delegate raised her hand. Mr. Potter, some would call this proposal revolutionary to the point of destabilizing. Some would, Harry acknowledged. The same people who benefited from the old system's inequities. But I'd argue we've already survived the destabilization. What we're proposing is the rebuilding. The chamber erupted in multilingual discussions. Harry used the moment to glance at Luna in the press section, who gave him an encouraging thumbs up while her quick quotes scribbled furiously. Hermione, seated with the British delegation, nodded approvingly. Beside her, Acting Minister Kingsley looked thoughtful, measuring the international reactions. The French delegate stood next. Britain's internal financial crisis is one matter. But you're proposing changes to international magical finance. The implications are extensive. They are, Harry agreed. Because the problems are extensive. How many of your countries restrict banking access for werewolves? For Vila. For any being not classified as a full wizard. Uncomfortable shifting spread through the chamber. What Mr. Potter outlines isn't merely a British solution, Nagnock added, stepping forward. The Goblin Banking Confederation has unanimously endorsed this framework for implementation across all our branches worldwide. That caused a stir. The GBC controlled over 70% of wizard gold globally. We aren't asking permission, Harry clarified, meeting the eyes of doubtful delegates. This is happening in Britain regardless of this body's decision. We're inviting participation in shaping a more equitable future. A bold statement, but one he and Nagnock had agreed was necessary. International magical politics moved at glacial speed unless forced. And if we decline to participate, asked an American representative. Harry smiled slightly. Then your citizens will still open copper accounts at Gringotts branches within your borders, and you'll face the same questions we did, just without having helped shape the answers. The debate raged for hours. Harry, Nagnock and their team fielded questions from skeptical finance ministers, traditionalist purebloods, and progressive reformers alike. By late afternoon, when the Supreme Mugwump called for an initial vote on creating an implementation committee, Harry was exhausted but hopeful. Those in favor of establishing the International Magical Financial Reform Commission. Wands rose across the chamber, not unanimous, but a clear majority. Motion carries, the Mugwump announced. Commission members to be appointed within 30 days, preliminary recommendations within 90. Session adjourned. As delegates filed out, many approached Harry with questions or comments. He answered automatically, his mind already racing ahead to next steps. You did brilliantly, Luna said, appearing at his side. Though you should watch for blibbering humdingers around the German delegation, they seemed particularly susceptible. Harry smiled, tension draining from his shoulders. Luna's unique perspective always grounded him somehow. Did I push too hard? He asked quietly as they gathered their materials. You pushed exactly hard enough, Hermione answered, joining them with Kingsley. The international magical community respects strength and decisiveness, even when they pretend otherwise. Minister Shacklebolt, Nagnock greeted Kingsley formally. Your support was appreciated. It's the right direction, Kingsley replied. Though I admit, when I returned to office, I didn't expect to oversee the most significant financial restructuring in magical history. History tends to happen around Harry, Luna observed matter-of-factly. Kingsley chuckled. Indeed it does. Speaking of which, his expression turned serious. We've uncovered more about Thornwood's operation. I need to brief you both privately. Harry exchanged glances with Nagnock. Both of us? This concerns Goblin and Wizard interests equally, Kingsley confirmed. Secure room, 30 minutes. They agreed, and Kingsley departed to manage the British delegation's follow-up meetings. What do you think that's about? Harry asked Nagnock. The Goblin director looked troubled. I suspect we're about to discover that Thornwood's conspiracy extended further than we realized. The Ministry's secure briefing room was warded against all forms of magical surveillance, a precaution that felt warranted given recent events. Harry, Luna, Hermione, and Ron sat on one side of the table, Nagnock, Silvermark, and two goblin security specialists on the other. Kingsley entered last, accompanied by the new head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, Gawain Robards. Harry tensed slightly. His former boss had led the assault on Gringotts, though evidence later confirmed he'd been misled about its purpose. Potter, Robards nodded stiffly. No hard feelings, I hope. Depends on what you're about to tell us, Harry replied evenly. Kingsley placed a sealed file on the table. What I'm about to share is classified at the highest level. It doesn't leave this room until we determine next steps. He broke the magical seal. The file glowed briefly before opening to reveal documents and magical photographs. Thornwood didn't act alone, Kingsley began. We've identified a network of at least 27 senior officials across 12 departments involved in the conspiracy. Most have been quietly removed from sensitive positions while we build cases. 27. Hermione looked stunned. How did such extensive corruption go undetected? Because it wasn't sudden, Robards explained. Our investigation suggests this group has operated for decades, perhaps since the First War with Voldemort. Thornwood was merely the most recent leader. A shadow government, Ron muttered. Bloody hell. Their primary focus appears to be economic control, Kingsley continued, pushing forward financial documents. Systematic manipulation of ministry contracts, international trade regulations, selective enforcement of banking laws. Nagnock studied the documents, expression darkening. These tariff adjustments targeted goblin interests specifically, craftsmen, importers, metal suppliers. A deliberate attempt to weaken our position over time. But why? Harry asked. What's their ultimate goal? Kingsley hesitated before revealing the final document, a manifesto recovered from Thornwood's hidden safe. They call themselves the Balancers, he explained as they read. They believe magical power should correlate directly with economic status. Their philosophy combines blood supremacy with financial elitism, only those who control significant wealth should control magical governance. That's disgusting, Hermione said flatly. It's also dangerously appealing to certain elements of wizard society, Kingsley noted. Especially traditional families who've lost influence since Voldemort's defeat. Luna, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke. This explains the pattern Daddy noticed years ago, legislation that seemed unrelated but consistently made it harder for magical creatures and muggleborns to accumulate wealth. Precisely, Kingsley confirmed. Subtly restrictive policies buried in seemingly progressive legislation. Harry felt a cold anger building. So Thornwood's attack on me, on Gringotts, was just the visible part of something much older and deeper. The opportunity they'd been building toward, Nagnock agreed, scanning the manifesto with disgust. A crisis that would justify seizing control of goblin banking permanently. Here's the immediate concern, Robards interjected. We've received intelligence that Thornwood's remaining allies are planning something significant, possibly as soon as tomorrow's implementation of the first phase of your financial reforms. Harry straightened. What kind of something? Unknown, Kingsley admitted. But they've moved substantial assets through untraceable channels. Our financial tracking team detected unusual patterns before losing the trail completely. They're planning a counterstrike, Ron suggested, his strategic mind engaged. Hit the new system while it's still establishing itself, create panic, force a return to stable ministry control. Silvermark nodded in agreement. Logical. The initial transition period is when the dual currency system is most vulnerable to manipulation. We need to accelerate our implementation timeline, Harry decided, looking to Nagnock. Can the reclamation spell be ready by morning instead of next week? The Goblin director frowned. Possible, but risky. The magical calculations, I can help with those, Hermione interrupted. I've been studying the arithmancy requirements since you first proposed it. And I can coordinate the copper node expansion overnight, Ron added. Bill and I have teams ready, we just need to activate them earlier. Harry turned to Kingsley. We'll need Ministry cooperation, no interference with sudden Goblin activities tonight, even if they appear unusual. The Minister nodded. I'll issue special directives to all departments. But Potter, are you certain bringing forward such complex magic is wise? The reclamation spell affects property rights across Britain. It only affects property obtained through unjust means, Harry corrected. That's the beauty of Goblin contract magic, it follows the intent of original agreements, not later manipulations. Which is precisely why the Balancers fear it, Nagnok added. Their wealth is built on centuries of exploitation and forgotten contracts. Luna spoke up again. The Quibbler can help. We'll publish a special Dawn edition explaining what's happening, so people understand when items start returning to rightful owners. The group spent the next hour developing their accelerated implementation plan. As the meeting concluded, Kingsley pulled Harry aside. Are you absolutely certain about this course, Potter? Once initiated, the reclamation spell cannot be reversed. Harry met his gaze steadily. I'm certain that waiting gives our enemies time to prepare. The magical economy is like a patient recovering from poison, sometimes aggressive treatment is necessary. Kingsley studied him for a long moment. You've changed since you were an Auror. More ruthless in your calculations. I've learned from Goblin allies, Harry acknowledged. And from being hunted by my own government. Some lessons stick with you. Just remember what you're fighting for, Kingsley advised. Economic justice is worthy, but not at the cost of your principles. Harry appreciated the concern, but his resolve remained firm. The Balancers had operated in shadows for decades, manipulating wizard society through economic control. Exposing them to sunlight, and stripping them of ill-gotten gains, was both justice and necessity. As the group dispersed to their respective tasks, Luna fell into step beside Harry. You're worried, she observed as they walked. Your forehead crinkles in that specific way. Harry couldn't help smiling. Is it that obvious? Only to me, she replied with quiet certainty. You're wondering if you're becoming what you're fighting against, using economic weapons against enemies just like Thornwood did to you. Her perception was uncanny as always. And what do you think? He asked, genuinely curious about her insight. Luna considered the question seriously. I think intent matters in magic and in life. Your goal is liberation, not control. That makes all the difference. She took his hand as they reached the Ministry atrium. Besides, the Nargles have completely abandoned you lately, they only cluster around people with dishonest purposes. Harry squeezed her hand gratefully. In a world turned upside down, Luna's unique blend of wisdom and whimsy kept him anchored. Ready to change magical finance forever? He asked. Her smile was radiant. I thought you'd never ask. Gringotts after midnight hummed with controlled urgency. In the heart of Account's chamber, Harry stood with Nagnok at the center of the massive financial map of Britain, now enhanced with additional magical layers showing contract history stretching back centuries. Dozens of goblins worked at stations around the perimeter, calculating precise magical coordinates while Hermione moved between them, verifying arithmetic formulas. The spell they were preparing had existed in theory for generations, a goblin reclamation magic that would enforce the original intent of contracts throughout Britain simultaneously. The implications are staggering, Hermione said, joining Harry at the central platform. Every goblin-made artifact sold under false pretenses, every property transferred through coercion, every inheritance diverted through manipulation, all restored to rightful ownership in an instant. Provided our calculations are correct, Harry noted. Otherwise we could destabilize property rights across Britain, she acknowledged. But the targeting parameters are sound. The spell recognizes just and unjust transfers based on original intent. Silvermark approached with updated figures. Copper currency adoption has reached critical threshold, 43% of all wizard businesses now accept it alongside galleons. Copper nodes active in all major magical settlements and 68% of minor ones. And international branches? Nagnok inquired. 23% activation globally, concentrated in European and Asian markets, she reported. Accelerating hourly as word spreads. Harry checked the time, 3 hours until dawn. Status on the balancers? Still mobilizing, Ron reported, entering with fresh intelligence. We've identified unusual activity at 3 locations, a warehouse in Manchester, an estate in northern Scotland, and an office building in magical Prague. Asset concentration points, Nagnok guessed. Gathering wealth they believe will be protected from our reclamation spell. Can we reach them before the spell activates? Harry asked. Ron shook his head. Too well protected, and we'd alert them to our accelerated timeline. Better to let the spell catch them unprepared. Agreed, Nagnok said. Our calculations now incorporate international extensions. The reclamation effect will reach Prague and beyond. The special edition is ready, Luna announced, joining their gathering. Distribution teams will release it precisely at dawn, as the spell takes effect. She handed Harry a preview copy of the Quibbler. The headline read, Economic Justice Dawn, Ancient Magic Returns What Was Wrongfully Taken Below It, a surprisingly clear explanation of goblin contract magic and the reclamation spell, along with reassurances for ordinary citizens that legally obtained property would remain untouched. This is excellent, Luna, Harry said, impressed by the article's accessibility. No mention of Nargles or Raxperts at all. She smiled serenely. Some occasions call for absolute clarity. Though I did include a small piece about how umgubular/kilters thrive in economic inequality, it seemed relevant. A goblin arithmancer called for Nagnok's attention, they'd reached a critical calculation point. As the director hurried away, Hermione pulled Harry, Ron, and Luna into a quieter corner. There's something else you should know, she said in a low voice. I've been analyzing the Midas Protocol documentation more thoroughly. It wasn't just about controlling goblin magic, it had a secondary function targeting Muggle-born magical signatures. Harry felt a chill. What kind of targeting? Identification and limitation, Hermione explained, anger evident in her voice. The spell matrix included parameters to gradually restrict magical capacity in bloodlines without sufficient wizard ancestry. Bloody hell, Ron breathed. They were planning magical suppression. Over generations, yes, Hermione confirmed. Subtle enough that individual Muggleborns might attribute diminished abilities to personal factors rather than external interference. Luna's normally dreamy expression hardened. Evil always finds new disguises, but the intent remains the same. Harry's resolve strengthened further. The Balancers weren't merely financial manipulators, they were attempting magical eugenics through economic means. Does Kingsley know? He asked. Hermione nodded. I briefed him privately. It's being incorporated into the case against Thornwood and his associates. All the more reason to proceed with the reclamation, Harry decided. These people have manipulated wizard society for generations. It ends tonight. They rejoined the main group as preparations entered the final phase. Goblin specialists were now inscribing a complex runic circle around the central platform while Nagnok directed the attunement of major spell components. We require your contribution now, Mr. Potter, the director stated formally. Harry stepped forward. What do you need? Your blood freely given, as before, Nagnok explained. But with a specific focus this time. As you provided, you must hold in mind the concept of balanced exchange, the foundation of all just contracts. The ritual was more elaborate than their previous blood magic. Harry stood at the center of the runic circle while 7 senior goblins took positions around the perimeter. Each held a copper implement, scales, coins, measuring tools, and contractual symbols. As before, Nagnok presented a silver ritual knife. This time, however, the blade was etched with contract runes that glowed faintly in the chamber's dim light. 7 drops, Nagnok instructed. each given with the intent of restoration and balance. Harry extended his palm, focusing his mind on the concept of fair exchange, of items returning to those who rightfully deserved them, of balance restored to a system long manipulated. The knife's edge was cool against his skin. 7 drops of blood fell onto the central rune, where they did not pool but instead spread outward along invisible channels, illuminating the entire runic network with a deep crimson glow. The goblin ritual team began a rhythmic chant, not in gobbledygook this time, but in a more ancient language that seemed to resonate with the very stones of Gringotts. The financial map above them pulsed in time with the chanting, golden threads of connection brightening and dimming like heartbeats. Harry felt magic building around him, different from wizard magic, more connected to concepts than to power. It was magic of binding agreements, of oaths fulfilled, of balanced scales. The reclamation framework is stabilizing, Silvermark reported, monitoring magical instruments. 87% alignment with historical contract records. Not enough, Nagnok said tensely. We need minimum 95% for safe activation. Harry closed his eyes, concentrating harder on the concept of restoration. He thought of objects made with pride and skill, sold under duress or stolen outright. He thought of lands transferred through coercion, of inheritances diverted through legal manipulation. Most of all, he thought of balance, not revenge, not punishment, but the simple restoration of what should have been. The magic around him intensified, responding to his focused intent. The crimson glow deepened, spreading further through the runic network. 92%, Silvermark called. 93, 95, 97% alignment achieved. Nagnok nodded in satisfaction. Prepare for activation at first light, 23 minutes remaining. As Harry stepped from the runic circle, he felt slightly lightheaded, not from blood loss, which had been minimal, but from the intense magical focus. Luna appeared at his side with a copper cup containing a restorative potion. Drink, she instructed. It contains dirigible plum extract, excellent for magical recovery. The potion tasted surprisingly pleasant, tart but not bitter, with hints of something like cinnamon. Harry felt energy returning immediately. Thanks, he said gratefully. Did you make this? With some help from Neville, she confirmed. He's been experimenting with botanical combinations to support different types of magic. Across the chamber, Hermione was making final adjustments to the arithmetic calculations while Ron coordinated with external security teams through a communication network. The atmosphere was tense but controlled, everyone understanding the historic significance of what they were about to initiate. One question I haven't asked, Harry said quietly to Luna. What happens to the balancer's wealth when the spell activates? Where does it go? To those from whom it was taken, if they still live, she explained. To their descendants if they don't. And if no direct line remains, it goes to the community most affected by the original taking. That's incredibly sophisticated magic, Harry observed. Goblin justice typically is, Luna replied. They've had centuries to perfect it while wizards dismissed them as mere bankers. A communication sphere activated urgently near Ron. He listened, expression growing serious, then hurried over to their group. Problem, he said tersely. Our ministry contact reports unusual magical activity at Thornwood's holding facility. Some kind of attempted breakout. Harry tensed. Thornwood's allies making their move. Looks that way, Ron confirmed. Kingsley's deploying Aurors, but they're stretched thin monitoring the Balancer's other activities. Harry looked to Nagnok, who was overseeing final preparations. The reclamation spell is your domain. I should help secure Thornwood. The director considered briefly, then nodded. Our preparations are sufficient. Preventing Thornwood's escape takes priority, he knows too much about weaknesses in our implementation. I'm coming with you, Luna stated matter-of-factly. Harry knew better than to argue. Ron. I'll stay and coordinate from here, his friend decided. Hermione's magical expertise is needed for the spell activation. Silvermark approached with a copper disc. Emergency port key to the ministry holding level. Password activated, balance due. Harry and Luna each placed a finger on the disk. Balance due, Harry stated clearly. The port key activated, the familiar hook-behind naval sensation whisking them away from Gringotts. They materialized in a corridor outside the ministry's high-security detention area, immediately aware of commotion ahead. Spellfire flashed from around a corner. Harry motioned Luna to stay behind him as they advanced cautiously, wands ready. The scene that greeted them confirmed their fears, for security wizards lay stunned or bound, while three hooded figures worked to dismantle the magical locks on Thornwood's cell door. The former minister stood inside, alert and expectant, clearly anticipating his liberation. Potter. Thornwood hissed, spotting them first. Kill them. The hooded figures whirled, curses flying. Harry erected a shield charm while Luna demonstrated why she'd survived the Battle of Hogwarts. Her spell combinations were unorthodox but devastatingly effective. Vertigo Maxima. Lumos Saltar, she cast in rapid succession. The first spell sent two attackers staggering, disoriented, while the second created jumping light patterns that further confused their visual perception. Harry followed with precisely targeted stunning spells, dropping both before they could recover. The third attacker proved more skilled, deflecting their initial spells and counterattacking with what Harry recognized as combat-level dark magic. Jets of purple flame that could cause internal hemorrhaging forced them to dive in opposite directions. Careful. Harry called to Luna. Department of Mysteries training. An unspeakable, then, part of Thornwood's deeper conspiracy. The hooded figure maintained pressure, casting silently and with lethal intent. Harry changed tactics, remembering his Auror training for dealing with superior duelists. Instead of targeting the attacker directly, he transfigured debris from the damaged corridor into swarming insects that provided momentary distraction. Luna immediately capitalized, casting a spell Harry didn't recognize that caused the floor beneath the unspeakable to temporarily lose solidity. As their opponents sank ankle-deep into suddenly gelatinous stone, Harry disarmed and bound them with conjured ropes. Fools! Thornwood snarled from his cell. You think stopping me changes anything? The system was corrupt long before I took office, I just made it more efficient. Harry approached the cell, keeping his wand trained on the former minister. Your friends outside aren't faring much better. The reclamation spell activates at dawn. Fear flashed across Thornwood's face. Impossible. The arithmetic calculations would take weeks, unless we had the brightest witch of her age working with goblin arithmancers, Harry countered. It's happening, Thornwood. Everything taken unjustly returns to its rightful owners within the hour. You'll destroy wizard society. Thornwood lunged against the magical barrier separating them. Centuries of wealth redistribution undone in an instant. Markets will collapse, family lines will be ruined. Only those built on theft and exploitation, Harry replied calmly. Honest fortunes remain untouched. Luna joined him, studying Thornwood with her uniquely penetrating gaze. You're afraid because you know exactly how much was taken, don't you? You've built your life on an edifice of stolen value. Thornwood's expression confirmed her insight. The man had known all along that his wealth, his power, derived from generations of systematic appropriation. Security wizards were beginning to stir as stunning spells wore off. Harry helped the nearest to his feet. Reinforcements on the way, he asked. The dazed guard nodded. Minister Shacklebolt, alerted, full aura response. Luna checked her watch. Harry, 15 minutes to dawn. They needed to secure the scene quickly. Harry cast his Patronus, the silver stag materializing instantly. To Kingsley Shacklebolt, he instructed it. Thornwood's rescue attempt foiled. 3 accomplices in custody. Need immediate security reinforcement at holding cells. The stag bounded away, passing through solid wall as though it were mist. It won't matter, Thornwood said, regaining his composure. You think this economic revolution of yours will simply be accepted? That centuries of tradition will yield to your progressive fantasies? Not fantasies, Harry corrected. Practical solutions backed by goblin financial expertise and wizard innovation. The copper network is already self-sustaining. And more importantly, Luna added, people understand they've been manipulated. Your confidential files made quite interesting reading in this morning's Quibbler. For the first time, Thornwood looked genuinely alarmed. What files? The ones documenting the Balancer's long-term strategy, Harry explained. Including the magical suppression elements targeting Muggleborns. Did you think that would remain secret forever? Thornwood's face contorted with rage. You idealistic fool. The magical bloodlines must be preserved and elevated. Our society cannot survive dilution by those without proper heritage. And there it is, Harry said quietly. The true face behind the financial manipulation. Same bigotry, different methods. Aurors arrived, securing the captured conspirators and establishing additional protective enchantments around Thornwood's cell. Harry briefed the team leader quickly, then checked the time, 7 minutes until dawn. We should return to Gringotts, he told Luna. I want to witness the activation. She nodded, producing their return port key. As they prepared to depart, Thornwood called out one final threat. This isn't over, Potter. The Balancers extend beyond Britain, beyond your reach. You've merely revealed yourself as their primary obstacle. Harry met the former minister's gaze steadily. Good. I've had practice being the primary obstacle to would-be magical tyrants. Didn't end well for the last one either. They activated the port key, leaving Thornwood's fury behind. Seconds later, they materialized in the heart of Account's chamber, where the activation countdown was reaching its final minutes. Status? Harry asked, rejoining Nagnok at the central platform. Final alignment at 98%, the director reported. Thornwood. Secured. Rescue attempt foiled. Nagnok nodded in satisfaction. Then nothing prevents our proceeding. 2 minutes to activation. The chamber had grown more crowded during their absence. Senior goblins from every Gringotts department now stood in formal positions around the perimeter. Representatives from other magical beings had also arrived, a centaur delegation, a house elf contingent, even several werewolves in formal attire. Word spread, Hermione explained, rejoining them. They came to witness the moment. Ron followed, adding, international branches are connected through communication spheres. Gringotts directors worldwide will observe the activation and extend the effect through their local networks. Silvermark initiated the final countdown. 60 seconds to dawn threshold. The financial map above them pulsed with increasing brightness. Harry could feel the magic building, not just goblin magic now, but a blend of magical energies as representatives from various being communities added their own signatures to the spell framework. 30 seconds. Nagnok stepped onto the central platform, raising his hands toward the map. Each being here represents those who have suffered economic injustice. Your presence strengthens the reclamation's reach and precision. 15 seconds. Harry felt Luna's hand slip into his. Hermione stood on his other side, Ron beside her. Despite the momentous magic about to activate, Harry found himself deeply grateful for these constants in his life, friends who had weathered every storm alongside him. 10 seconds, 9, 8. The runic circle began to glow with the same crimson light from the ritual, spreading outward in precise geometric patterns. 3, 2, 1. Equilibrium restorum. Nagnok intoned, bringing his hands together in a decisive gesture. A pulse of golden light erupted from the central platform, expanding outward through the chamber and continuing beyond, passing through solid walls as it spread across Britain and farther still. The financial map flared brilliantly, then began to shimmer as thousands of tiny points of light shifted position. It's working, Hermione whispered, awestruck. Look at the transfer patterns. The map showed a massive reorganization of magical assets, objects moving between locations, property boundaries adjusting, vault contents shifting. Most dramatic were bright streams of resources flowing from concentrated points toward widely distributed destinations. The Balancer's holdings, Nagnok identified. Returning to those from whom they were taken. Through their connection to the financial network, Harry could feel the magic working, not chaotically, but with precise, almost surgical accuracy. Each transfer followed contractual intent, restoring balance without creating new injustices. Communication spheres around the chamber activated as reports flowed in from across Britain and beyond. Paris branch confirms reclamation effect active throughout France, artifact restoration proceeding in Eastern European sectors, goblin-made items returning to craft families in Switzerland and Germany. Most striking were the physical manifestations beginning to appear in the chamber itself. On a side table, a beautifully crafted silver goblet materialized, bearing the distinctive marking of Ragnarok I. A moment later, an ancient battle-axe appeared beside it, its blade inscribed with goblin poetry. Lost treasures, Nagnok breathed, approaching reverently. Stolen or coerced from our craftsmen centuries ago, now returned by the reclamation. Similar scenes were unfolding throughout magical Britain. Later, they would learn of mansions whose ownership certificates suddenly changed names, of museum displays where goblin-made artifacts vanished to reappear in goblin settlements, of galleons streaming from certain vaults to redistribute among those previously cheated. For nearly an hour, they watched the reclamation unfold through the magical map and incoming reports. The scale was staggering, centuries of economic imbalance adjusting in a single morning. Will there be chaos? Harry asked quietly. Some, Nagnok acknowledged. Change of this magnitude cannot occur without disruption. But the spell's precision minimizes collateral effects. Only unjust transfers are reversed. A goblin messenger approached with urgent news. Director, we're receiving reports of disturbances at multiple Balancer strongholds. Some are attempting countermeasures to reverse the reclamation. Futile, Nagnok stated confidently. The magic is already established, it cannot be undone. Still, Harry noted, desperate people take desperate actions. We should alert Kingsley to potential violence. Ron was already activating his communication charm. On it. Horror teams are standing by for exactly this possibility. Reports continued flowing in, some troubling, others heartening. In Hogsmeade, shop owners watched in amazement as accounting books updated themselves, showing the cancellation of coerced debt obligations. In the Ministry archives, property records reorganized to reflect original tribal ownership of Centaur territories. At Hogwarts, several artifacts in the trophy room vanished, returning to the goblin families who had crafted them. And throughout Britain, copper currency nodes experienced a surge in activity as people recognized the stability they offered during this unprecedented transition. The Daily Prophet has issued an emergency edition, Hermione reported, reviewing a freshly delivered copy. They're calling it, the Great Rebalancing, and actually providing reasonably accurate coverage. Competing with the Quibbler will do that, Luna observed serenely. Nothing motivates journalistic integrity like being scooped by your competitor. By mid-morning, the initial wave of reclamation had stabilized. The magical map showed continued minor adjustments, but the major transfers were complete. Gringotts began preparations to reopen for limited business, providing reassurance to a wizard public understandably concerned about their assets. 97% of standard accounts unaffected, Silvermark reported after analyzing the data. Only those with significant holdings derived from unjust means experienced major changes. And the Balancers? Harry asked. Financially devastated, Nagnok confirmed with satisfaction. Their power base relied almost entirely on ill-gotten gains. With those restored to rightful owners, they've lost both wealth and the influence it purchased. Kingsley arrived shortly before noon, looking tired but determined. Potter, we need to talk. He led Harry to a private conference room where maps and security reports covered the tables. The balancers aren't taking this lying down. We've had violent incidents at 3 locations, attempted attacks on copper currency nodes, an assault on a Goblin representative in Edinburgh, and a direct strike against the Quibbler's printing facility. Harry tensed. Luna's father is safe, Kingsley assured him. Your advance warning allowed us to implement security measures. But these are coordinated attacks, Harry. They're targeting the symbols of the new economic order. And the main symbol is right here, Harry guessed. Gringotts itself. Kingsley nodded grimly. Intelligence suggests they're planning something significant, a last desperate attempt to reverse what's happened. They can't undo the reclamation, Harry pointed out. No, but they can create enough chaos and fear to undermine public confidence in the new system. Kingsley spread out a tactical map. We're positioning Auror teams here, here, and here. But Gringotts' internal security remains your domain. Harry studied the deployment plan. They'll expect conventional defenses. We need something unexpected. What did you have in mind? A slow smile spread across Harry's face. Let's give them exactly what they want, access to the heart of accounts. But on our terms, not theirs. The attack came at dusk, just as Harry had predicted. Having studied the Balancer's previous patterns, he recognized their preference for the transitional hour, when day security was ending but night protocols weren't fully implemented. From Nagnok's command center, they watched through security enchantments as multiple strike teams approached Gringotts simultaneously, some disguised as late customers, others using disillusionment charms, a few employing more exotic concealment methods. 12 operatives total, Ron counted, tracking magical signatures on a detection grid. For with Department of Mysteries training, based on their concealment techniques. They're good, Silvermark acknowledged grudgingly. Using gaps in our standard detection patterns. But not the enhanced ones we implemented this afternoon, Harry noted with satisfaction. Every approaching balancer was clearly visible on their monitoring charms, their positions marked with glowing indicators. They're converging on entrance points as expected, Nagnok observed. Shall we prevent their entry or proceed with your plan, Potter? Let them in, Harry confirmed. The outer security team will appear to fall back under pressure. Guide them toward the false heart chamber. Nagnok gave the orders. Throughout Gringotts, Goblin security teams implemented the carefully choreographed response, offering just enough resistance to seem authentic while creating a path of least resistance toward their trap. The balancers were skilled, Harry had to admit. Their coordination was precise, their spellwork efficient. Under normal circumstances, they might indeed have penetrated Gringotts' defenses. But these weren't normal circumstances, and Harry had learned much about security vulnerabilities during his time as both Auror and fugitive. They've reached the first redirection point, Silvermark reported. Taking the bait, moving towards sublevel 3 instead of 4. The false heart of accounts had been prepared meticulously, an exact replica of the real chamber, complete with functioning financial map and apparent control systems. The only difference was that it had no actual connection to the Goblin financial network. Team Alpha has neutralized guard position 6, Ron continued tracking. Proceeding to the vault corridor. Team Bravo encountering heavier resistance at the eastern junction. Reinforce eastern defenders, Nagnok ordered. Make them work for it, but yield at the critical moment. Harry watched intently as the intruders made progress through Gringotts' lower levels. Despite knowing this was a controlled scenario, he felt tension building. If even one balancer team deviated from their expected route. All targets now proceeding to sublevel 3, Silvermark announced finally. Estimated convergence at the false heart in 3 minutes. Hermione? Harry checked. She nodded confidently. Spell matrix is primed and stable. Once they're all inside and attempt to interface with the system, it activates automatically. And Luna's team? In position, Ron confirmed. Quibbler exclusive guaranteed, with ministry-approved details ready for release. Everything was set. Now they needed the balancers to spring the trap themselves. The minutes ticked by as they watched the infiltration teams converge on the false chamber. One by one, they disabled what they believed were critical security measures, demonstrating concerning familiarity with Goblin protocols. They definitely had inside help at some point, Nagnok growled. Those disarming sequences are classified. Finally, all 12 operatives reached the false heart chamber. Through monitoring charms, Harry watched them secure the room and approached the central platform where the financial map glowed convincingly. Perfect, he murmured as their leader, a tall wizard whose magical signature identified him as former unspeakable Broderick Chambers, began activating what he believed was the control system. They're initiating their counterspell, Hermione observed, monitoring magical frequencies. Attempting to reverse the reclamation effect by corrupting the central node. Had this been the actual heart of accounts, such an attempt might have caused significant disruption. Instead, Chambers and his team were unwittingly activating Harry and Hermione's prepared spell matrix. Containment in 3, 2, 1. Hermione counted down softly. In the false chamber, the financial map suddenly flared brilliant blue. The balancers reacted with momentary confusion before realizing something was wrong, but by then, it was too late. The blue light intensified, coalescing around each infiltrator individually. Identification matrices active, Hermione confirmed. Magical signatures being recorded and transmitted to Ministry enforcement databases. It was more than simple identification. The spell they'd created combined elements of the Marauder's map's recognition magic with Goblin financial tracking, creating unalterable magical records of each participant's identity and actions. They're attempting countermeasures, Ron reported as the balancers cast frantically within their individual containment fields. No effect on the binding. Of course not, Hermione said with professional satisfaction. The spell matrix incorporates their own magical signatures against them, the more they resist, the stronger the binding becomes. In the false chamber, the balancers were now completely immobilized, each surrounded by a detailed magical record of their crimes, attempted break-in, conspiracy, connections to previous financial manipulation. The evidence was being simultaneously transmitted to the Gringotts official record and to international magical law enforcement. Auror teams moving in, Kingsley's voice reported through a communication charm. All exit points secured. Luna's press team. Harry checked. Documenting the arrests as we speak, Ron confirmed. Complete with quotes from captured balancers, thanks to Veritasium authorized by emergency security protocols. It had worked perfectly, not just capturing the immediate threat, but creating irrefutable evidence against the broader conspiracy. By morning, magical law enforcement agencies worldwide would be acting on the intelligence gathered. A neat resolution, Nagnok observed. Though I suspect we've only captured the most desperate elements of their organization. True, Harry acknowledged. But we've exposed their methods and identified their magical signatures. The shadows they operated from are gone. As reports confirmed the successful detention of all infiltrators, the tension in the command center gradually dissipated. Goblins returned to their regular duties, the immediate crisis averted. You should rest, Hermione advised Harry, noting his exhaustion. It's been a rather intense 24 hours. He couldn't argue with that assessment. Between the ICW presentation, the accelerated reclamation spell, Thornwood's attempted escape, and now this final confrontation, he'd been operating on magical reserves and determination. A few hours, he agreed. Then we need to prepare for tomorrow's full reopening of Gringotts under the new protocols. As the others dispersed, Luna remained beside him. Walk with me, she suggested. There's something I'd like to show you. Curious, Harry followed her through Gringotts' now quieting corridors, eventually reaching an unfamiliar door near the upper levels. The goblins granted me access to their observatory, she explained, opening the door to reveal a remarkable space. The circular room's ceiling was transparent, showing the night sky above Diagon Alley. But more impressive were the magical instruments arranged around the perimeter, telescopes that seemed to observe more than just stars, devices that tracked magical currents across continents, and in the center, a miniature version of the financial map they'd been monitoring. "It's beautiful," Harry said, genuinely impressed. "But why show me now?" Luna guided him to the central map. "Watch what happens when I adjust the temporal focus." She turned a small dial, and the map's perspective shifted, no longer showing current financial flows, but projecting forward in time. One day, 1 week, 1 month ahead, the patterns evolved and stabilized into something more balanced than Harry had ever seen, magical resources flowing more equitably between communities, regions previously dark with economic isolation now illuminated with activity. "Is that a prediction?" he asked. "A projection based on established patterns," Luna corrected. "The Goblins have been developing this model for centuries. It shows the natural evolution of our changes if they remain uninterrupted." Harry studied the projected future with growing hope. The reclamation had been just the beginning, the foundation for a more fundamental shift in how magical society organized its resources. "It's working," he realized. Not just the immediate justice of returning what was taken, but the longer-term rebalancing. "Yes," Luna agreed, her voice soft but certain. "That's why I wanted you to see this now, to understand what you've helped create." Harry felt a weight lifting, a tension he'd carried since his first desperate flight to Gringotts weeks ago. The betrayal and hunting had led to something transformative, something that might prevent similar injustices for generations to come. "There's something else," Luna continued, adjusting another control. The map zoomed out further, showing international magical connections. The model suggests expansion opportunities, regions where similar reforms could take root. Harry examined the highlighted areas, magical communities in Eastern Europe, South America, parts of Asia. "You're thinking beyond Britain. The issues we've confronted aren't unique to our society," Luna pointed out. "Economic control has been used to suppress magical beings worldwide." The implication was clear. What they'd accomplished in Britain could serve as a template for broader change. It would require international coordination, Harry noted. Teams of goblin wizard experts working with local magical communities. "Yes," Luna agreed. "Led by someone with both the expertise and moral authority to overcome resistance." Her silver-gray eyes met his. "Someone like you, Harry." The suggestion took him by surprise. "Me? I'm not an economic expert, but you understand the intersection of justice and practicality," Luna countered. "And magical communities worldwide know your name, your history. Doors would open that might remain closed to others." Harry hadn't considered his future beyond the immediate crisis. His Auror career was effectively over, he couldn't return to enforcing laws for a system whose fundamental flaws he'd exposed. But this would be building something rather than merely maintaining order. He corrected gently. "If I did something like this, it would need to be we, not just me." Luna smiled, her expression brightening. "I was hoping you'd say that. The Quibbler's international subscriptions have increased 700% since we began covering the economic revolution. We could document the global implementation while facilitating it. A reporting mission that creates the changes it documents," Harry mused. "Very Luna Lovegood." "Very us," she countered, taking his hand. Harry looked back at the projected map, at the potential for transformation extending far beyond Britain's shores. After years of fighting dark wizards, hunting criminals, and now dismantling corrupt economic systems, the prospect of building something new appealed deeply. "We should discuss it with Nagnok," he said finally. "And Hermione and Ron. This would need a team approach." "Already mentioned it to them," Luna admitted. "Ron's considering the security implications. Hermione's drafting implementation frameworks for different magical legal systems." Harry laughed softly. "Planning ahead without me?" "Planning with you," Luna corrected. "Just giving you time to arrive at the conclusion yourself." She knew him well, perhaps better than he knew himself sometimes. The past weeks had changed him, opened his eyes to systems of control he'd never fully recognized despite his own experiences with corruption. When would we start, he asked, the decision already forming in his mind. The Goblins suggest allowing 3 months for the British implementation to stabilize, Luna explained. Then beginning with the European branches, where the groundwork has already been laid through their cooperation with our reclamation spell. 3 months. Time to ensure what they'd built here remains strong, to help Kingsley's reform government establish proper oversight, to prepare for a longer journey. All right, Harry decided. Let's do it. Britain first, then wherever needs this model most. Luna's smile was radiant as she sealed their agreement with a kiss that felt like both ending and beginning, the conclusion of their immediate struggle and the commencement of something larger. When they separated, Harry gazed once more at the projected map with its balanced flows of magical resources. From fugitive to economic revolutionary to international reformer. Not exactly the career path I envisioned. The best paths rarely are, Luna observed wisely. Dad always says life's most important journeys begin with being chased by something unexpected. Harry laughed. Your father has a unique perspective on life. He does, Luna agreed. He also says he's holding your rooms ready at our house for whenever you're ready to move out of Gringotts. The Nargles have been quite insistent about it. The casual offer, so typically Luna in its directness, caught Harry momentarily off guard. But as he considered it, the rightness of it settled comfortably within him. After weeks of upheaval, of bank vaults and borrowed spaces, the prospect of somewhere that felt like home, with someone who felt like home, was deeply appealing. I'd like that, he said simply. Luna nodded as though it was all settled. Good. The dirigible plums have been growing especially well this season. They respond to harmonious domestic energy. Hand in hand, they left the observatory and made their way back through Gringotts corridors. The bank felt different now, no longer just the imposing financial institution Harry had known since childhood, but a partner in transformation, a foundation for something new. Tomorrow would bring the formal reopening under the dual currency system. The weeks ahead would involve stabilizing the reforms, addressing inevitable challenges, preparing for international expansion. But tonight, walking with Luna through quiet halls that had witnessed financial history being rewritten, Harry felt a sense of peace he'd rarely experienced. He had been betrayed, hunted, forced to make desperate alliances. But those very circumstances had revealed truths he might never otherwise have discovered, about economic systems, about goblin magic, about his own capacity to effect change. Sometimes betrayal opened unexpected doors. Sometimes being hunted led you exactly where you needed to be. And sometimes, collapsing an economy was the only way to build a better one. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.